I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Fall River School Committee for March 16th. Deb, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Mr. Bailey? Mr. Hart?
Here.
Ms. Larrabee? Here. Ms. Pereira? Ms. Rodrigues? Mayor Coogan?
Here. I just want to make people aware of one thing. Dr. Taylor is joining us virtually tonight. Salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person who may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We have a few citizens' inputs tonight. First, Johnny David, Saxon Street, Fall River.
Dear School Committee, I am writing to ask about why this body feels it is not necessary to provide the residents of Fall River with the budget. There is a lot of talk about transparency and openness around election season, but as soon as the ballot boxes close, it's back to business as usual. It is very foolish to think the good times will never end. We need good sound management of the budget and more than the typical smiles and handshakes that everyone will be okay. Just trust me. These are abnormal times for our youth, and while I will cut you some slack in affirmation that this is the first time anyone has handled these challenges, it only underscores the need to have open and regular dialogue with families who are looking to grow their children's potential. We need to give these children every chance to succeed, and having a closed for policy during budget session is an affront to the directive you serve while being a member of the school committee, to the families you serve as residents of Fall River, and to the futures of the very children that are relying on you to do the right thing to set them up for success. Johnny David.
Next, Gabriel Amaral, Indian Town Road, Fall River.
Good afternoon, school committee members. My name is Gabriel Amaral, address 901 Indian Town Road, Fall River, Mass. I am sending this email in regards to the school budget. I agree with Mr. Agia and Ms. Rodrigues on the fact that this budget should be made public prior to being voted on. The citizens of this great city should be able to address their concerns prior to being on the hook for any bill. I think lack of transparency has been a daunting issue in this city for quite some time now, and it's time we correct that. Thank you very much for your time and all that you do for the youth of our city. Respectfully, Gabriel Boomer Amaral.
C.J. Ferry, Buffington Street.
Members of the school committee, it has come to my attention that the Fall River School Department and the Fall River School Committee refused to provide draft copies of the proposed FY23 budget. As you may be aware, any document reviewed, received, or used by the Fall River School Committee, whether in draft or final form, becomes a public document and is available to the public upon request. The executive session rule would not apply to keep this budget away from the public eyes, as nothing in the budget is covered under any of the exceptions for executive session. To promote transparency in the budget process and within the Fall River School Department, availability of these documents would go a long way to show that the Fall River School Department is not trying to slip things by the general public. I hope to see that the proposed FY23 budget is made available to the public in draft form, as it is common practice with all other city departments, whereas the school department budget makes up 50% of the city budget. We, the people, have the right to know. I thank you for your opportunity to present my position to the school committee. Respectfully, C.J. Ferry.
Next up, Sheila Dias, Ray Street, Fall River.
Good afternoon, school committee members. My name is Sheila Dias, and I am a mom with a son who attends Durfee High School. As a parent, I want to see all the funds the school department receives go towards the students receiving the best possible education that this district can possibly give. The school department should publish the budget before the budget hearings, so parents like me can have the opportunity to weigh in. That's the right thing to do. That would be the option that is most transparent to the residents of this great community. Thank you to Kevin Aguirre and Sarah Rodriguez for sticking up for transparency. We, the parents, love and respect that. I hope that we see changes by the school department to correct this issue. The taxpayers of this community deserve it. Thank you to everyone for allowing me the opportunity to write this letter. Sheila Dias.
Jeffrey Goodrow, Palmer Street, Fall River.
Hello to the members of the Honorable Fall River School Committee. I am writing today because I heard they are not releasing the FY23 budget ahead of the budget deliberations. That doesn't make any sense to me. This community deserves full transparency, and the public should see where its tax dollars are being used. Again, we need full transparency of school department dollars. We shouldn't take any steps to sugarcoat that. We should see how the school department is using dollars to support our Fall River students, and we should be able to see the budget and to offer an opinion during the budget deliberation meetings. I hope the Fall River School Committee takes steps to fix this transparency issue. Thank you, Jeffrey Gondreau.
Next is Robert Dias, Ray Street, Fall River.
Hello, Fall River School Committee. I would like to see the school department publish the budget before school committee budget deliberations start. It would give an opportunity to the entire public to weigh in and be able to give a fully informed opinion during budget meetings. Thank you, Robert Dias, Jr.
Colin Dias, Ray Street, Fall River.
Good afternoon, members of the Fall River School Committee. First of all, I think the letters from other city residents speak for themselves. Again, I am disappointed the school department will not publish its fiscal year 23 budget on the city's website. Allow opportunity for the public to see where its taxpayer dollars are going. Dollars that are meant to give support to the students of our public schools, and to see that they are going before budget deliberations. Again, the school department should make every effort possible towards full transparency to the public. And we need to restore, especially everything that's happened, we need to restore the public's trust in city government. And to be frank, I think if the administration wanted to snap their fingers, you would see the budget published in 5 minutes. And I respectfully ask you, as a resident of this community, to fully commit to the transparency we all talk about on the campaign trail. Why don't we want to see this budget published? I ask that the school committee take a vote supporting the publishing of the budget, or to look at updating our policy, mandating that the budget and the budget summary be published on the city's website before budget meetings begin. And the fact that this school department has not already published a budget shows that it's no common sense towards this is common sense towards transparency. And it shows that we have a long way to go before this school district and this city fully commits towards transparency. And again, I want to thank you to Mr. Aguiar and Ms. Rodriguez for your dialogue on this very important issue. And to the other school committee members, please step it up and work hard for full transparency and accountability in our government in full. Thank you very much.
Committee of the Whole. We're going to start our budget presentations tonight with Finance. Mr. Almeida.
Good evening,
Chairman,
everybody.
sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Mr.
We've gotten a couple of complaints and suggestions from the public related to the budget. I don't find any reason to think, I don't think Mrs. Ponce is hiding anything, I don't think Mr. Almeida is hiding anything, I don't think the committee's hiding anything. So I would recommend, I don't think it needs to be taken in a vote, because now's not the right time, but I believe it just is good transparent practice just to post it on the website. So I think it would solve a lot of this issue if we just had the administration say, yes, we're going to post this on the website. When we do the draft, it's just a draft. We're going to work through it over the next several months collaboratively, and then we're going to have a final. I really don't think it's, the best thing to do is just be up front of this and we're not hiding anything. So I recommend the superintendent just commit that she's going to post this, and let's just move on, and there will be more discussion. I think she's listening. Thank you.
I want to let Ms. Pereira talk.
So I'd like to address that citizens' input as well. Because of course, the concerns of the citizens are important to me. I was elected to serve them. I appreciate that you guys were applauded on speaking towards transparency. Maybe I need to go back and watch the meeting. I don't believe I ever sat here and said I don't think it should be shown. Matter of fact, my recollection, Mr. Aguirre, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the first day we sat down to discuss finance, you wanted to adjourn. And I spoke up and said that no, the taxpayers of Fall River deserve to hear this conversation. They deserve to see where their money's going, and they're watching. So I appreciate that the two of you are champions of transparency, so am I. And I think it's unfair and untruthful, more to the point, to say that the rest of us are not. What we had spoken with Kevin, he told us that's not the way they usually do it. I actually looked into it after that meeting, because I wasn't sure myself, found out they don't really do that on the city side. They haven't done it on the school committee side until we're putting forth a budget that has been approved. I don't have an issue with things being posted ahead of time. If Kevin tells me that it's inappropriate because it interferes with the way he does work, then I have to listen to that, because that's part of my job as well. No one up here is hiding a thing, which is why I advocated for continuing to have these finance meetings, as well as the administration, to continue to have these meetings so that the public is aware of what's going on and can hear the discussions that are happening. So I really need the public to know that certainly Kevin and Sarah, as well as myself, and I think I can speak for Bobby and Mimi, we want to be fully transparent, and we're not hiding a thing. And I think that's important that the public know. And I respect the superintendent. I think we all do, because we voted to have her. So I think we'll leave that decision up to her. And with that, I yield.
I do think going forward, I do want to make one quick announcement, Kevin. Going forward, obviously, this ran into some questions, so next year it will be up online as a draft, in a draft form, as we talked about briefly before the meeting, that's what I believe we should do. I talked to the superintendent, and she's in favor of it, so hopefully this won't happen again, and moving forward, this is why we have a committee with people offering different opinions to get change in the right places. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, this is the last time of a bygone practice. Mr. Aguirre.
So just so if I can comment, there's nothing being hidden here. I'm gonna make that very loud and
Yep.
clear. And this is a process we've followed. I've been here in the school district since fiscal 2011, and we've followed the same practice over and over again. And if the committee so chooses, and it's their will and their purview, and they want everything posted online, I will do it tomorrow. But the reality of the situation is that once a vote is taken by the school committee to make the budget available to the public, the budget is released immediately thereafter. It's available to the public for a minimum of 2 weeks we give you until the public hearing, and at that time the public can address the budget. So, that's as transparent as I can be. We followed that process for years and years and years. If the process requires a change, and that's something that the school committee would like to make and request as a change, I have no issue doing that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Mr. Aguirre.
Since I was called out by another colleague, I do want to respond. The transparency that I'm talking about, I don't think it's that big a deal. Mrs. Pons can say right now to Mr. Almeida, can you please post this online? Tomorrow morning it will be done in 15 minutes. This document says annual budget submitted by the superintendent of schools. Okay, whether it happened in the past or not, there is zero reason why the budget that the superintendent gives to this committee for us to deliberate before we approve a draft budget should be given to the public. It should be given so that the public can weigh in, the public can call us, the public can come to citizen input time. I'm not saying you're stealing anything or doing anything illegal, Mr. Almeida. What I'm just suggesting is the public brought a concern that said, we'd like to look at this. Valid point. All I'm asking for is that you take 15 minutes tomorrow, half an hour, whatever it is, or have somebody do it, and we just post this online so they can look at the line items. There's a lot of things in here that people might want to weigh in on before they wait to hear the presentation, so that when we're going to approve this next week or whenever the deadline is, how do we get a chance to even change anything? The transparent point that I was making at the beginning of the year, wanting to dismiss this, was because I still believe that this school committee is giving away our fiduciary responsibility as elected officials to have line items. That's why I suggested this is actually like a waste of time, other than the fact that Mrs. Ponce is actually doing a good job of listening and is going to collaboratively work with us. But we have a responsibility, and that's why I said we wanted to leave. Because I think this is wasting everybody's time if we're not going to have a true, solid discussion. Now, Mrs. Ponce has made truth to this, that she is listening, and there is going to be some changes. But that's because of her character, not because of the rules and the regulations of the school department. So when I say I want to be transparent, I'm not just talking about it. We're not hiding anything, so let's put it out there. I think we're being foolish to sit here and say we're not going to do it, or whatever it is, we're just going to protest, or we'll kick it down, as the mayor just said, to next year. This can happen tomorrow morning. Enough with the nonsense already. This is very simple. It can be solved. We can let people weigh in. People have valid concerns. They bring them to us. Well, I think they're doing a fine job, Mrs. Ponce, but the one thing I think that we're not doing is just listening to people and say, why don't we just post it? 2 weeks from now, when we finish the draft, then we'll post the draft. But the draft should be a little different from this because we're going to talk about it. So it's not pandering to anybody. I'm just saying like I see it. We're not being transparent. We should be transparent. And at the same time, if people on this board want to say that they're going to do their jobs, we cannot have just one line item. I think that's been proven already, that we need to have more than one line item because we're not doing the job that we were elected to do, and have some line items. With that, I yield.
Thank you.
I agree. This is going to be the end of it. I agree with you, Kevin. That's my point. I agree with you. I say post it, let everybody see. Is that something we could accomplish this year or no?
Yep.
Yeah? Beautiful.
Okay.
As long as everybody knows that there will be changes. It's a draft.
It's a draft, okay. Committee of the Whole, the budget presentation for the departments. We're going to start off with Mr. Almeida, Finance.
Good evening. We in the Finance Department are requesting an additional FTE to the department. We're requesting a payroll manager position. The justification for the payroll manager position is the fact that the city finances, school finances have grown tremendously over the last several years. 5 years ago, we were at $150 million in our net school spending budget. In FY23, our budget is going to be just under $205 million. In addition to that, we have about $9 million that we spend in revolving funds every year, and we have grants currently that total about $17 million that we get on an annual basis. In addition to that, we're currently going through the ESSER stage here, and we've got, between the ESSER funds and the ARPA funds that we've received, we've got just over about $63 million in total. So with that, in my rationale, I provided you with documentation as to support the request, showing you comparison to New Bedford and Lynn. Both districts are a little bigger than we are, but you can see that we are significantly understaffed compared to those districts. So with that, I am requesting your support.
Any questions, Mr. Almeida? Mr. Aguiar?
Just the letter that was written, I'm confused by a few of the comments in it, because it makes it seem like as if we're not doing well at the present time, and I'm not sure what that means. So it says, this position will help us move in the right direction, allowing us to have the ability to move, to be more proactive versus reactive. Can you explain just?
Absolutely, just exactly as it reads. I don't have enough, we in the office don't have enough time to do, the best job we possibly can, and with this additional support, we'll be proactive, we'll be doing the things that we need to do going forward.
But this is payroll, right? Like, it's not.
Yep, and that's going to enhance the finance department. So it's additional stuff that comes off my plate, additional stuff that comes off other staff members' plates, and we're able to focus our attention onto the bigger picture and worrying about the bigger picture of the city finance, the school finances.
So the payroll is not getting done at the present time?
Oh, it's absolutely getting done.
So,
Everybody's being paid appropriately, and things are happening the way it's supposed to be. But it can be much better.
But that's what I'm just saying. I'm not being wise here. I'm being honest, that I think that the payroll is getting done. When I'm looking at it, it looks like, oh, there's a couple of payroll clerks like that are doing the work, and maybe it's just that the explanation of what the department does for payroll isn't necessarily articulated.
Okay.
But I'm looking at this as we had 3 payroll clerks, the payroll's all getting done. You know, if we add another X amount of employees, I'm not so sure that automatically yields to have another person. Then I look at the second column, about last year we had ESSER funds, we added a position already. So,
The needs keep growing, Ms. Aguirre. It's a lot of money to spend, a lot's going on.
is it the wording of the position? When I see the word payroll manager, maybe that's what I'm stuck on,
Yep.
is I'm looking at that as they're in charge of the payroll. Not that they're like an assistant finance
That's-
manager or something like that. Is that?
So if you look at, I'll just give you the example. If you look in New Bedford, for example, they have a payroll supervisor, they have an AP supervisor, they have a grant supervisor, and they have a budget analyst. We have a finance manager, and that's all we have. So what I'm saying to you about the way that I wrote the rationale, and the reason I wrote the rationale that way is due to the fact that my office is not proactive. We're doing what we need to do, and that's it. And we need to move in the right direction. So there are things that we need to do in the office that we cannot focus our attention on to make the office better.
So if the position's going to get paid $70,000,
Yep.
like, and that's new, that's not it's not just an increase, I guess, it's a whole new position.
It's a new position.
It's a new FTE.
Yes.
So I guess I'm just stuck on the fact that it's a payroll. The rationale is like that you need assistance maybe at a supervisory level across the whole department. But when I see payroll manager, I think that person's going to be in a silo of payroll only, and I'm not so sure that that's what you're.
That is what I'm requesting, and a big piece of my job, and I focus a lot of my time, is on the payroll piece. So by adding this position is going to take away much of that responsibility, and I can focus my time and efforts on what is important in city finances.
What is the other position there? We used to be grants, now is it called something different now?
So when I first started here in the Fall River school system, that was when we were going through the turnaround with the state, and the state was here. And at that time, they recommended that we have a CFO and 2 quote-unquote assistant business manager and a grants manager, or financial manager. And at the time, that's what we had. When I was hired as the CFO for the school system, the position went away. My second supervisory position went away. And that's what I can say.
So now you're dealing with only 2?
Yep.
So we used to have a grants, like the side grants person,
Yep.
and then an assistant, basically assistant to you.
Yep. Yes.
In a higher up position.
Yes.
Just speaking for myself, I think that model would probably be a better model, but, you're the one that's got to work with it. But when I just looked at the thing, it said 70,000, and I look at what the financial manager, you know what I mean? To me, I want to support you, but at the same time, I think internally, you guys must have had that discussion that said the payroll is rather than this, or I personally think that the old structure that you just talked about gave you a better handle over the whole place. So I just raise it as, to me, that's what I would do, but you guys do whatever you got to do. I'm not giving you a hard time. It's just, I do think that if we had a structure like you just talked about, the grants that, that makes sense. You almost have like 2 principal and 2 vice principals in the department. That would make more sense to me than this. With that, I yield.
Anything further for Kevin? You all set?
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, instructional. Dr. Curley.
Good evening, Mayor Coogan, Superintendent Ponce, and members of the school committee. It's my pleasure to be here tonight representing the Office of Teaching and Learning in the district. We are not requesting any additional positions specific to that department, but I will take this opportunity to offer some context for what you will hear from other department leaders. As you may know, over the last few years, our district has used turnaround planning guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to develop school and district sustainable improvement plans. But in response to a changed landscape for learning and teaching in school year 20 and 21, we looked to updated and more relevant guidance from the department in the form of the acceleration roadmap as we drafted our plan for the current year. Using new guidance, we identified and we doubled down on priorities that were consistent with those identified in the acceleration roadmap. These priorities included fostering a sense of belonging and partnership among students and families, continuously monitoring students' understanding of standards-based grade-level content, and ensuring strong, appropriate instruction with just-in-time scaffolds when needed. We believe that work focused on these priorities is the right work in this district at this time. And these priorities will continue to be at the forefront as we plan forward to accelerate learning in school year 23. Aligned with these three priorities, two of which are predicated on the use of high-quality instructional materials, we have already made significant investments in curriculum resources and the professional development of our teachers and support staff in an effort to ensure accelerated learning for all students. These investments have included the Wonders Reading and Illustrative Math curricula at the elementary level and the Carnegie Math and Open SciEd curricula at the secondary level. Additionally, we have committed funding to specialized resources for substantially separate classrooms for students with disabilities, for our multilingual learners in foundational classrooms, and our new dual language program. As we plan forward into school year 23, we will continue to commit resources to support the implementation of these and other high-quality resources, as well as the related professional development opportunities, all with the goal of accelerating learning for all students in the district. Moving forward, investments will include online learning platforms like ST Math, Mathia, LearnZillion, Mystery Science, Gizmos, and Lexia to be used district-wide in all classrooms. Touch Math, Imagine Learning to be used in support of students in specialized classrooms. Instructional materials like Rec and Rec math racks, Unifix cubes, and other manipulatives, as well as consumable science materials to support core instruction at the elementary and secondary levels. We will continue a partnership with ANET to provide valid and reliable district-wide assessments, a partnership with Lynch Leadership to support principals and school-based teams in their work around providing excellent and equitable instruction, research for better teaching to support administrators in the supervision and development of staff, the New Teacher Project in supporting school and district teams strategically plan for accelerated learning, and various curriculum-based partnerships to support the effective implementation of our new materials. We will also continue to fund our Summer Teacher Institute, providing for facilitation alongside outside partners and for monetary compensation for staff participation. I know this sounds like a lot, and I think that it probably sounds familiar. We did have an opportunity recently to speak at length with the instructional subcommittee about our new initiatives. And in school year 23, we continue on the implementation journey. We see the coming year as an opportunity to deepen our collective understanding around the importance and the power of district-wide use of high-quality instructional materials for all students, to further develop teachers and support staff around effective implementation, and to provide equitable opportunities for all students. And so at this time, I would welcome any questions about this information, or I'm happy to answer them as we go, as other departments step up.
Mr. Aguirre?
I don't think we have that, what you just read, but could we just get that sent by email?
Oh, sure.
The question I had was, I know you said that this department's not adding one. I'm assuming the job that you're in isn't in here, it's in another part? Your position now, interim assistant superintendent, is under a different part of the budget? It's not this one?
I think it's probably in the superintendent's budget, and then what's here is a lot of the positions, all of the director positions are in this department, and there aren't any additions. I think there are just some in there that are open, or, it's nothing new.
That position's not a new position. That's a position that was vacated by me. Dr. Curley is filling in as an interim, and as soon as I think that we're going to be posting but that's not as a new position, it's already an existing position.
What I'm talking about is in the budget itself.
It's budgeted under, yes,
I think
under.
it's in
So
your
it's
department.
under the superintendent. It's under the
When I'm looking, just in transparency, as we see it, I see the curriculum department as the head of the curriculum department is the assistant superintendent for curriculum, in my mind. So when I look at this, I'm trying to figure out, like, and I've asked for this before, and I think you said you're working on it still, about an org chart, so we can kind of see where everything is, because if you haven't been around, there's a lot of positions all over the place. So I would say that at some point, we should get something that looks like that. But what is telling to me on here is that we have the social studies at a 0.5, and I don't know if that means it's just paid out of the, when I'm looking at the budget, it used to say like the whole budget number, and then half and half, half is paid one way, half is another. Does this mean half, just a half-time person,
half of
and
the-
the half-time they're doing something else?
Yeah, so half our responsibilities are as the social studies director, and half is as the program director for Title I.
For Title I.
Yep.
Just my own suggestion, because that's what the point of this is. We have 4 major subjects in the city: English, math, social studies, and science. We look at this document, we have 100% of a person in charge of each of those 3 departments, but in social studies, we have it as a half. At the same time as we have Title I as a half. There is no way even the best person in the world can do both of those jobs correctly, half and half. Kevin Aguirre's opinion. Take it as what it is. We have money. When we used to have to, like, people had to do 3 jobs because we had no money, and these are the types of things, as far as I'm concerned, that we should correct once we get the proper funding. Social studies K-12 should be a full person, in my opinion. The Title I director should be a full person so that they can dedicate their time to it. That's just my opinion, and I do think after we look at if we put all the curriculum in one place, we're going to be able to see either we're spending the proper amount on curriculum and instruction, or we're not. This is the most important department in learning in the district, is curriculum and instruction. So I, for one, would add money to this, but we haven't seen it's hard to see the whole picture. Once we get that, it might make sense. But my last question is on the green program improvements for, it looks like text materials and stuff. Why is that? Is that just because it's paid for on grants that we just approved, but we approved them prospectively going forward?
We increased the materials a little bit for the curriculum.
It's like 800,000, is that what it says?
Yes.
So we're increasing by 800,000.
No. We're not increasing by 800,000. That's what it is for this year as far as the curriculum piece goes, just associated with the curriculum department.
So last year, we might have spent 7 or
Yes.
something like
Yeah,
that.
it only went
So-
up about 100,000 is what it went up by.
Yeah, and the things that we just approved at the subcommittee and then the full committee, that's not included here because that was paid for on grants or with funds that were already the one-time funds, so.
I think that most recently what was approved did not come out of this year's operating budget. I think it was grant funded.
So, I'm not being overly critical.
Sure.
But this department what we have in front of us is these 2 pages. So it has a green thing that says we're spending 800 and some thousand on additional curriculum, but there's nothing else to go with it. So if we can get like either something to say, this is what that 800,000 gets, because we should know, and maybe we want to add to it, or maybe we want to suggest subtracting to it. So that's why I asked. It seemed like it was confusing. 850,000 is not a small amount of money, but it's probably not enough money, in my opinion. Thank you. I yield.
Anything further for Ms. Curley? Thank you. Next up is health and physical education.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here to speak about the health and the physical education program in Fall River. I am here advocating, as you see on my budget, for student leaders. That is the positions that I'm looking for to add for our elementary, for our middle, and our high school. And my overall goal in doing so is to support the overall teaching and learning and achievement of our students, to also have teacher leaders that have the expectation of fostering teamwork, shared responsibility, decision-making, and also best learning practices for our teachers, and also to build a professional community among teachers Though I support in the elementary, the middle, and the high school, I think it's very important for them to have a colleague that they can see of the best practices, and having that person to go to and be the person that can work with them in their professional learning. Sometimes when they're with me, they may not be as open as they would with one of their colleagues, and I really want to foster that professionalism among my department.
Anything else?
I think that was just the other pieces that are there are pretty much the budget that I've had before. This is the only additional piece that I was asking for this year.
Okay. Any questions for health? Mr. Aguirre?
So the only question I had was, the teacher leader positions, is this it's a typical, so this is already agreed to by the union in other places, so it's the same type of situation. Can you just tell me what that, am I to assume that that's for time after the normal day? So if I'm a teacher and I teach a full course load, this is for, this lead stipend would be for work in addition to my regular duties, not during the school day. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, it would be in addition, so it would be working with me to provide support for professional development within our PLCs, being basically shared leadership with me, work with the different grade levels. Because we have 43 teachers in the department. We have elementary, middle, and high school, and I also have the adapted PE teachers also. So I want to make sure that each level in each department is getting the appropriate attention that it deserves.
And you didn't make any requests for additional adapted PE or any other district-wide PE staff, so that would imply to me that you're sufficient and the kids are getting service appropriately or better?
Yes, thank you. In our last budget, you had approved for me to add the additional APE teacher, and when we had our budget meeting, I had spoken with Superintendent Loesch to see basically what are our numbers and what is coming in, because I don't know the programming at every school for the next year. And as it stands right now, we've been assured that all the needs of the students are being met, and that this time we don't feel that we need additional positions. But if for some reason that number was to grow, we may need to come back to the school committee and discuss that. But I will say the position that we added last year has been phenomenal in meeting those needs, so I really appreciate that support last year.
Yep, and I didn't want to, I'm not singling you out for asking that question, so I asked the superintendent for to send to the committee anybody that requested something that wasn't, and you weren't on it, so I wasn't being presumptuous, but your name wasn't on it, so.
No, I
that's why I
appreciate it.
assumed that. When we talked about the curriculums for drug and alcohol awareness and all of that stuff, I think that we need to have a focus on what we're doing K-12 on that, and I think that falls under your domain.
Yes, yes.
What I would ask through the superintendent is that the committee gets a report of what we're actually doing K-12, as well as maybe some recommendations on what your recommendation would be or the superintendent's recommendation to be, so that we can take this issue to the next level. If there's curriculum that needs to be purchased and whatever else needs to happen, I think it's an important issue, K-12, that we need to tackle. So now is budget time would be the time to ask for that, but and I'm not asking you for it now because I'm not putting you on the spot, but that issue has to rise to the forefront.
Absolutely.
And we need to know what it is and what it's not. I think we can do a lot better than what we're doing, but I don't think we're doing nothing at the same time. So
Right.
if you articulate what you're doing, what you'd recommend, we can have a vote or even at the subcommittee, but I'd like to get that in the next couple of months so that we can plan for next year and do something much greater than what we're currently doing.
That would be fantastic. We currently have a curriculum that we use for our drugs and alcohol. The state requires that you file for having a drug and alcohol education from grades 6 to 12. But as you stated, it's not a 6 to 12 issue. It goes much lower. So that's when we had done the grant and had brought in the health education from grades 3 and up. So we are addressing that within our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, age appropriately, obviously, with drugs and alcohol. It is an enormous problem, and it is something that is the forefront of our curriculum.
Yeah, and I'm not certainly an expert on any of it, but what I would suggest is talk to the people that are in the field. Let's come up with the best plans, and then we can provide better services for our kids.
Yeah, we have excellent community partners, and I'm very happy to have that support from them, and we work hand in hand to make sure that there's the programming and extra support when needed, but we can always do better.
Yeah, and like I said, we do have resources now. So the resources used to be the reason why we didn't do a lot of things. That's off the table now, in my opinion, so please bring forward whatever you can. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further? Mrs. Roderick?
I was just trying to get my thoughts together. This is just coming from my ignorance. How many students do we have with adaptive PE in their IEPs?
Okay, so.
And I'm not expecting you to have that answer off the top of your head.
No, I was just going through the reports the other day, and right now, and I'm thinking of all the caseloads that I have right now, I have up to 85 that we have with IEPs. We also have some of our classes that are ASD classes that will have students that have APE needs. We will take all the students together, so we're meeting the needs of the APE students, but we're also having that socialization piece. Our goal is always to try to integrate as much as possible, and so when we're able to do that, we want to do that. So there's that piece, but it's not just the IEPs. Like, it's kind of hard. You don't want to look just at the number, but you want to look at what is the need within that
Right.
number. So it might say, oh, there's, this many, but this child has this much need, or this child in a wheelchair, or medically fragile. So we run the gamut from children that don't have any ability to be out of a wheelchair to children that actually just might need work on their core or strength overall.
I appreciate that you said that you needed to look at the need and not just the number.
Right.
Because, when we're looking at adaptive PE, like, that is a great opportunity for all kids to learn how to engage with one another. Like, that's a great social opportunity for our neurotypical kids and our disabled kids. Like, that is just, it's a wonderful opportunity for that. So if we can't, that's why I was trying to understand, like, how many kids do we have pulled out for APE? So that helps me understand that a little bit better. And then my other question was about health curriculum. How much SEL work do we have embedded in our health curriculum?
All our health curriculum has it with embedded, so it's all part of our lessons. Like, it's very important that when we do our SEL piece, it's not in isolation, because it doesn't have the same effect.
Right.
And it needs to be an ongoing, and it needs to be within the lessons. So that's all embedded, it's all aligned with our national frameworks, and we also have SEL frameworks, and that all comes together. And just to add, I don't know if you're aware, at the high school, we have a program, it's called our APE Best Buddies, and so we have students that for credit, they come and they work with our APE teachers and our APE students. So we're trying to continue to build upon that within our schools. So I'm very proud to have that program, and it's been really great for kids, because I've had kids that have come down and said, I think I want to be a special ed teacher. I think I want to work with, and it's fantastic, and it's such a relationship building between the students. So I really love it.
I've worked with a few kids that have been on the buddy side of that, and they've reiterated that's kind of made them look at other careers, kind of given them an opportunity to be like, hey, these are kids that are going through the same things that we are as teens, and so there's a piece of understanding there and a piece of connection there that becomes genuine. When our kids don't have that ability to engage with one another, it becomes like, oh, that's the disabled classroom. This is where the rest of us go. And so that obviously is something that I feel really strongly about. But I appreciate you answering those questions. Again, it's coming from my own ignorance about how some of that piece works. So I just wanted to know. I appreciate that. With that, I yield.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, thank you. Next up, athletics. Mr. Buston.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the athletic department. I'm in my 6th year as athletic director and 27th year involved in Durfee athletics. I would like to start out by thanking our past and current administration and school committee members for their continued support of our athletic programs. With your support, we have been able to build an athletic department team. Members of this team include 2 positions that have been consistent over the years: the athletic training position, which has been Kelly Mahoney for the last 13 years, and the athletic clerk position. I had the pleasure of starting my tenure with Blythe Egan, then Nicole Henrique, and now Vanessa Pilar. These positions have been instrumental in running an athletic program of our size. Again, with the support of upper administration and school committee members, we have added 2 positions that have taken us to the next level in a true Division I program. Assistant Athletic Director Kristen Garvin and Strength and Conditioning Coach Ed Matenas have done exceptional work. I feel like the head coach of a great team. This team has navigated brilliantly through what we have called the 2 Cs, COVID and construction. To say that the last 2 years have been challenging would be an understatement. Between constantly changing venues and transportation pickups, along with creating COVID-19 binders and hand sanitizer stations, our team worked tirelessly to make sure our student athletes had an opportunity to play and be safe. I believe the COVID-19 pandemic has had a tremendous impact on the social, emotional well-being of our student athletes. Keeping them on the floor, field, track, ice, course, and in the pool safely has been our top priority because we knew that they needed it. All of our coaches have done a tremendous job not only working with our student athletes on their skills, but more importantly, their mental and social well-being. We will never be able to measure the positive impact that our coaches have had on the lives of our student athletes over the last 2 years. We have embraced the slogan, "Top or Tough," in the athletic department. This message is for our student athletes to become the best they can be academically, mentally, physically, and social-emotionally. The programs that we have in place are meant to address all these areas. One of Mrs. Garvin's tasks is coordinating our middle and elementary school sports programs. After a year off due to COVID-19, our programs are back. This past fall season, we had 264 students participate in our middle school program. And in our first season of elementary school cross-country, we had 172 students participate. The winter season is coming to an end next week, with middle and elementary school finals being held at Durfee High School. We have 219 middle school students participating and 211 elementary school students participating. The addition of strength and conditioning coach position has been overwhelming success, mostly due to the leadership of Ed Matenas. Coach Matenas has developed relationships with our student athletes that make them want to work out every day. Between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., we will have upwards of 75 to 100 student athletes in the weight room. Not only is this benefiting our athletes physically, they are creating team bond, which will lead to a better team culture. The emotional benefits, the social emotional benefits to this program are immeasurable. Another program that has been a huge success is Unified Sports. We have unified basketball with Coach Jared Polisher and unified track and field with Coach Rebecca Marshall. We also have added unified strength and conditioning this winter with Coach Matenas. These programs are amazing. The Unified Sports slogan is "Choose to Include," and Durfee is doing just that. Durfee has been recognized by the Special Olympics as a champion school for the implementation of these programs. Now that many COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted and construction is close to being completed, our renovated indoor athletic facilities are the best around. The construction of the new turf baseball field and softball field is set to begin in June. This, along with the 8 new tennis courts and a multi-purpose field, will give us the best athletic facilities in the area, if not the state. I am extremely excited about where our athletic department is headed in the future. With that, what I'm asking for is a part-time athletic trainer to go along with head trainer Kelly Mahoney.
That's the only addition you got? Okay, anybody have any, Ms. Pereira?
Just a quick question. As I was reading over this, if you could fill in the hole on the second page. So I'm assuming you might be talking about athletic trainers. It says surrounding communities with a second athletic trainer on New Bedford and Taunton High. Then if you flip the page, it says New Bedford has the luxury of having 5 teachers in the building who have their, and then it doesn't say anything after that.
I don't know why it got cut off.
That's okay.
Yeah, so,
You're not the English teacher, so we'll let it slide.
yeah. Well, I think I had the whole thing there. I don't know why it got cut off. Talking to the New Bedford athletic director, he's very lucky. They have teachers in the building that teach all day long, and they're certified in athletic training.
Okay.
So, I mean, that
Gotcha.
would be ideal if we could find somebody like that.
Got you. They don't have 5
No.
athletic trainers in there. They just happen to have 5 teachers who have that experience in education, but
Correct.
they have 2.
Yeah, and it's great because if somebody, if the head athletic trainer is absent or, not feeling well or whatever, they have
Sure,
somebody,
they're
they
right
have somebody
there.
to fill in. And right now, for us, that's a struggle.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Ms. Larrabee?
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Buston. How many hours right now, approximately, or as close as you can get, is Kelly putting in as our only athletic trainer?
During the fall season, with football and we have a lot of sports in the fall, I would say she probably puts in 50 to 60 hours a week.
Okay. Spring?
Winter is, we try to flex it with her, so if she has a long night with basketball, like basketball game will get over at 8:30 at night or whatever, she'll come in at like noon or whatever. But she has a lot of paperwork to do. I would say most seasons she's putting in definitely over 40 hours a week,
Okay, on a consistent basis, not
on a
just...
consistent basis, yes.
Right, so you think a .5 position, not a full athletic?
Yeah, we ideally need
director
somebody
with-
3 o'clock to 7 o'clock
3 o'clock.
during the week, yeah.
So-
That's ideally what we need.
Try that first and see if that
Yeah.
help, okay. All right, thank you, I yield.
Anything further for Mr. Buston? Mr. Aguirre?
So I'm assuming that you must have an analysis of those hours, that in order to come up with this number, you must have done some research. So if we could get copies of any of those hours, it would just help us to understand what it like, what the requirements are and all that.
Yeah.
I want to say that when you were talking about the number of hours, I believe in the last negotiation, we increased the overtime rate as well.
Yeah, I guess it's something that she doesn't keep track of, we don't keep track of. I mean, she'll flex every once in a while, she'll come in a little bit later, but there's so much paperwork to do that she'll end up coming in anyway, and then she'll stay for what she needs to stay for.
So she's only getting paid for 40 hours a
Well, she's
a
on
week at the salary?
she's on salary,
And there's no provision in the contract for overtime?
on holidays. Yep, holidays,
Any data that you'd get, it kind of would make sense to have us figure that out.
yeah. I think the contract says that she has to fulfill her duty as needed. That's what it says.
Yep. And you talked about New Bedford having a second trainer, plus the 5 people that work. So are they just compensating, or?
So the second trainer is a teacher in the building that is specific to after-school. The other 4 that they have they don't,
Fill in as needed, not,
As fill in
not
as needed.
necessarily. I was
Exactly.
going to say, they must have trainers all over
Yeah,
the place.
they're
So
very, very lucky, yeah.
we have no idea of the requirements, and when you ask for another one, it looks like, well, you're asking for another one, but you got to have them at certain sports, but analysis of that, like how many this means, so she's got to be here, she's got to be there. I know a little, but if you
Yeah.
could send us anything like that, it would just help us to.
There are certain sports I put in there that they have to be at. You have to, by the MIA rule, you have to have an athletic trainer at it. The other sports you don't, but, for instance, in the fall, if there's a football game going on and a volleyball game going on at the same time, she's outside, has to come inside if there's an injury.
What I'm referring to when I'm saying data is how many home games are there, so that she's there for X amount of hours. So her week of 40 hours, let's say, you look at the games and you would do an analysis to say half of her time is already used on mandatory games.
Okay.
That's kind of the thing that I was asking for. But
Gotcha.
I've always been of the belief that the high school, like the athletic trainer, the athletic director works for the high school principal under the high school. And I see, like, you got Durfee here as the heading, and so I don't see, and excuse my ignorance, but I'm assuming that Matt Damaris does the evaluation, like your evaluation?
Yes.
As the high school principal. So I was asking this when Durfee was here, because I thought it naturally was a department within Durfee. When I look at it, if it's a district-wide thing, personally, I'm in favor of a district-wide, so if you're the high school athletic director, 9 through 12, I think we need a director of athletics and activities, K to 8, so that they can put the time in and create the opportunities for kids and different programming. And you said that Kristen Garvin's doing a lot of that work in there, but it's via the Durfee piece. In my opinion, I think we need to look going forward at a K to 8, running these programs, running the athletic programs after school on the Saturdays, season after season after season, to get these kids doing something. So Kevin Aguirre's opinion would be that we should have Durfee, you're part of Durfee, and then we should have some other entity that's going to be K to 8 to coordinate with all of them, and it shouldn't necessarily fall on your lap as the Durfee folks. You've got plenty to do with 2,500 kids and all those sports and fields and the like. So just my editorial would be, I think that we should look at that, Madam Superintendent. With that, I yield.
I do have one question, Brad. I remember the old days you used to sub people out for hockey. You still doing that?
We're still doing that.
Will
yeah.
the half-time eliminate that for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. That's all I got. Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Buston. Next up, Art. Jackie Francisco.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. I would like to thank you also on behalf of our 49 teachers in the Fine and Performing Arts Department, as well as our thousands of fine and performing arts students across the district K through 12. My name is Jackie Francisco. For some of you who haven't personally met me yet, welcome. And I run the department for all of our fine and performing arts teachers. So tonight I am coming to you to advocate for a music tech itinerant. And I had put in the rationale the description around that, but I'm just going to kind of go through a few little bullets for you first. So we have approximately 700 students currently in the performing arts department. So that means anyone in band, chorus, orchestra, or theater. Right now, we're at about 700. We used to be right around 980 pre-COVID. Our goal is to get back to that ratio so that we can say that about 1 in every 10 students in our schools is participating in some sort of performance art. We also have every student in K through 8 involved in either general music or art. They can also participate in theater now at the middle school, thanks to our recently adopted theater budget, so thank you for that. We do have great theater programming going on right now at Talbot and Morton, and ready to start it up at Cuss. The one thing that we do need is someone that teaches music technology at RPA. So currently, there is no music teacher at RPA. We have an art teacher there, and we have a PE teacher there. But there is no opportunity for students to have music at RPA. So my thought is, and as I am constantly kind of reflecting on what engages kids, especially at that level and in an alternative setting, music technology is a really great avenue for kids to be able to develop personal narratives through lyrics, through songwriting, and when they have a tangible, when they have something that they can complete and make themselves using GarageBand or Soundation, they are more likely to be engaged, especially our boys. So thinking about the position, you have about 192 kids at RPA right now. 120-something of them are boys. So that alone tells me that a program like music technology could really engage our kids to do some writing through music and to be a little bit more literate in music and be able to reflect and on their own identity and sense of self through music. So the reason why I think it should be an itinerant and not an FTE that falls under the umbrella of the personnel at RPA is that I feel like this person could cover the student body in 3 days, and I've discussed this with the principal at RPA, and she's in agreement. So I would love to use those 2 other days to supplement programming at schools that need additional music. So at this time, I can take questions or comments.
Ms. Pereira?
Hi, thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm a very big fan of music. I use it as therapy.
Excellent.
And there's no doubt in my mind, countless studies have shown that not only does it let children express themselves, it helps them also reflect. And certainly those are skills that are very important across the district, but especially at RPA. So you had mentioned that currently there's no in-house music instruction. That leads me to believe in the past we've had someone come in, or there literally is no music instruction at RPA currently? No. Okay. Obviously, I strongly support this. I think it's a huge hole that I didn't even realize was there until this process. So thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Ms. Larrabee?
Just quickly to reiterate, there's never been a music teacher at RPA?
So I've been doing this job since 2015, and there was no music teacher there since 2015. I had discussed it with the prior principal and the principal before that, but I was sort of advocating for it to be held under their FTEs, and it just never came to fruition in their budget requests.
Fully going to support this.
Thank you.
I think it's needed at RPA.
Thank you.
There's a program that I'm familiar with, it's called Lyricism, with some of the teens that are using it now in the city, and it's blowing up. So,
Yeah.
fully supporting this, kudos to you for
Thank you.
recognizing the need
you.
for this at RPA, and...
Thank you.
And
Yeah, and New Bedford Guide published an article today that Whaling City Alternative in New Bedford is outsourcing a programming for music tech. They're using an outside community partner to come in and teach the kids, so I'd like to one-up that and have our own.
there you go. I yield.
Mr. Bailey?
Just in agreement, I would fully support too. I think if we didn't do this, we'd be missing the boat. It's a conversation that I've had a long time, how important arts are in general, not just music, visual arts, arts in all form. So more of a comment, I fully support it. I'm around the kids. I think it's a great way to connect. I'm surprised that we didn't already have this position, to be quite honest with you. It's definitely a way that kids connect, podcasting, writing, self-expression.
Yep.
We can go on and on how important this is, but you have my full support with this.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Anything further? Mrs. Rogers?
Mr. Bailey, I think you might be mistaken. The cool kids no longer podcast, so you might have to get up to speed with that. But any opportunity, right? But there's such a huge piece there. This is just a comment. This isn't even a question. But there's such a huge connection there between music and social emotional learning. So to not have that, it really surprises me. I don't know how we didn't have a music teacher. I'm wondering, though, how long have we had an art teacher there? Has that been from the beginning?
Yeah, there's always been an art teacher there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we always had an art teacher, but we
Yeah.
just never...
Yeah.
Okay, but we just never had a music teacher. We've got to give, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but we've got to give kids every opportunity to be able to express themselves, because not every kid is going to play sports, and not every kid is going to do theater. So whatever opportunities that we can create for them to be able to build those skills, we're going to win in the long run. So with that, I yield.
Thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Aguirre?
Just a technical question. I don't see this on this sheet. Am I missing it? When I go under art, Ms. Francisco's...
It might be under music, because they did put 2 bullets in the agenda tonight, art and music.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it
It's
is.
it's in music.
It's
And you're going to
music.
present on music too?
That's me, it's all me.
No, but I'm saying now, this is one presentation, or you're going to come back for music?
I
or-
am not going to do any
Okay,
kind
I
of
was just-
costume change or anything. This is it. Just one.
Right, yeah, I would just say, you
Yep.
have open lead teacher art K-8 on the budget. Is that new, or is that
No,
just you can't fill?
That was granted to us last year. We have lead teachers in K through 8 for art and music. That was last year.
Yeah, but it says
So we still-
open, so I'm
I don't
wondering,
know
is
why
it
it
not
says
filled? Is
open.
that the problem?
It's filled.
They're filled. It's stipended after-school position, so it's not an FTE. It's a stipend for someone that currently works for us.
Yeah, just the words open
I
are
don't
there,
know.
so I was just going to ask you, it is important to get somebody, but you have
Oh, yeah,
somebody
we have people. We
on
have
both of
people,
them.
for
And
sure.
was there any request, I don't think your name was on it either, for anything other than this position?
No.
So you haven't requested anything of the administration that is not, you don't need musical instruments, you don't need supplies, you don't need
No, we
art
actually,
supplies, you have,
we've been very, very lucky to have been granted quite a few grants to supplement our musical instrument supply, and we are cooking with gas. We're solid right now, so thank you.
with that I yield, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, thanks, Ms. Francisco. Next up is nurses.
I just want to say Nurse Long, she's not adding any positions because she's been before this committee throughout the
adding all
year.
year.
So as needed, and we,
Okay, so
Exactly.
any
So we
questions for the nurses? Oh, Mr. Aguirre?
It's more for the superintendent, so.
More for the superintendent?
We had mentioned this about, obviously in COVID, we had to increase drastically our nursing staff and CNAs and all of that stuff. And I think if, knock on wood, if COVID is gone, at some point, we're going to hopefully be getting something to say we have a reduction. So just because,
right.
that's all I'm asking is, are we going to see any analysis moving forward of, we thought we needed we approve the CNAs, I don't think you're probably using them as much as, so when do we see that that's coming off?
We actually, there are some retirements that attrition is taking care of some of that, but Nurse Long can certainly speak to that.
So, I'm very happy to be here again to see you in person and faces this time, which is really awesome. I think over the past 2 years, school nursing has kind of switched from individualized health to community and school nursing, public health nursing, to keep the environment safe for our students, disease prevention. So the staff that I have now is adequate. It's actually awesome. We have started now that the masks have come off to start doing 25,000 screenings that we do annually that we have not started yet. Actually, we started last week, but we were unable to do that with the way the COVID issues were. So this extra staff actually is coming in very handy right now to catch up. I think that's the main thing now, that we have to catch up and set the focus back to the individual child, not so much the community public health. And everyone here, I mean, the committee has been awesome, definitely vested in the nursing department. You've always been very kind when I've come to ask for help. So,
Mr. Aguirre, one of the things that we need to clarify is that the CNAs, they were contracted.
oh yeah, we don't have those
So
anymore.
we just discontinued that and haven't hired any
No.
through that service. So we didn't actually hire them, we just called them as needed.
Yeah, and we haven't had them for a while. We haven't had them for a while, the CNAs.
Yeah, you understand my question, though, like...
Yes, and I've had a retirement of an LPN, so that will, take care of one, and then I've got another retirement coming up, so, and I think as things progress, see how things go, I'd hate to go backwards, but I
Yeah,
think...
hopefully things get better, you
And
know.
and the needs of the children are not quite the way they were 2 years ago. They need more right now. There's been 2 years where they haven't had screenings, they haven't seen their doctors, they're just going back to the doctors now. So I think the need is there, especially to get these screenings done, because we lost 25,000 screenings last year. So like the kindergarten students last year are first grade, we're catching them this year. But the first grade kids, there's different screenings for each grade level. So to try to catch up, it's going to take a little while.
Yeah, so part of the, and I think it's more for the superintendent, so I've advocated, obviously, for FTEs. So we have no idea. So I'm tearing apart my binder here by mistake, but does the retirements through attrition, are those cost containments in the beginning of this budget? That's what I'm trying to find, and it just screwed up my budget. So how would we know, if we're a school committee, that you have an LPN that's retiring, that's no longer going to be filled by attrition? How would we know that?
Mr. Aguirre, I think what you're asking us to do is, and certainly we'll do that, you want us to assess all the people that we brought on, assess what our needs are, and if there are positions that we no longer need, that we need to act accordingly. Just like we came to you for additional positions, if we have to reduce, then we'll do what we need to do. So we'll create a list of who we have on staff, what they're doing, and if there are retirements, if we're going to repurpose people, et cetera, so that you know exactly where those positions are being filled and what the needs are.
But when I'm looking at the budget, so
extras.
if I'm looking at it and I say, okay, I'm looking at the line items, if the position costs $50,000, you just said that you have somebody that's retiring.
Yeah.
Let's say they retired 50% through the year. If I look through this budget and see that line item, it's going to say 50,000, it's not going to say 25,000, with a comment that says retirement going to be unfilled halfway through the year. That's what I'm saying, I don't see that. So we see 50,000. You internally, the person leaves, superintendent, school committee doesn't know that that person was meant, the schedule to be half-time. So that's all, I'm not giving you a hard time. You could come to us and say, I need more, and I'd probably vote for it, because I trust what you're saying. All I was asking was if we're...
I don't need more right now.
Just so I can comment. There's no plan to reduce right now. If what we have for staffing is indicated here, the number of positions that we have. if we'll come back to you if once we assess and we do whatever we need to do, and come back to you with a staffing plan to reduce if that's what's required, but that would have to come from Nurse Long.
But maybe I got a bad memory. Must be just me, because I swear I just heard somebody at one of these tables say that one of the LPNs is going to retire, and then we're going to get rid of that via attrition. Maybe I'm just not making, maybe I'm making it up.
There is no plan to reduce what we have here in the
So you're
budget.
saying I didn't hear that?
What you
I heard what you heard. I hear what you heard.
Okay,
But
and
what
you're
we
saying
have,
it's not true?
what we have for staffing here in the budget, we have, according to this budget, we have 29 positions in the operating, one is Karen's position, and we have five positions currently funded through ESSER. That's how many positions we have in the nursing budget, in the nursing
I
department.
get it.
I think that okay, so I'm the one who said that, we used the term attrition. I think that what your aim was, we added positions. Throughout the year, we added positions for the nursing department. So you were asking us, so we added these positions as COVID slows down, as we need less, are we going to see a reduction? What I said was, we're going to look at all of our positions. Some of those may be absorbed through attrition. So if somebody retires and we have that position, instead of cutting somebody, we might use them and repurpose them, and they might fill a slot. That's what I was getting at. We're going to look at our positions. Right now, if somebody's retiring, that position's not vacant until they actually retire, because somebody can withdraw their retirement up until the end. I was just simply saying that, yes, we did add positions. They were extra positions throughout the year. We may have positions where we're going to have some vacancies, whether it's retirements, people leave, et cetera. So some of those extra positions that we added, maybe those people may be able to fill in to those open spots.
Yeah, I think it sounds like that's what you're saying, but I'm not crazy. I definitely heard that, so that's why I'm just asking. It's a budgetary issue. So as you all are talking in your budgets, we can only assume that you are planning ahead. So when you plan ahead, you say, well, we might be losing somebody. At that point, if we know it, like, to me, it's not that big a deal, but
It's almost too early to tell, too, what's going to happen. I mean, we're only in 2 weeks without masks. I wouldn't want to say, let's reduce it by 1 or 2 people and then have something happen, So I think we will continue to look at it and look at, whether or not the FTEs will continue to be at the level that we have now.
I understand totally, and I understand your point about the needs. I'm not suggesting otherwise. All I was asking was, are we looking at if we added, good responsible budgeting would be, if we added due to something, that something may be gone, we should go back to a normal. I think that's a fair question to ask, and I'm sure we're going to get it. So with that, I yield.
Ms. Pereira.
Hi, Nurse Long. I just have just a quick question regarding screenings, because obviously you mentioned that, of course, while our scholars weren't in school, those screenings were impossible, right, for you to conduct. Are there any plans, like let's say scoliosis, for example, are there any plans to not just, it's 7th grade, right? That's
It's 5 through 9.
Okay, so are there any plans that maybe someone, like we're going to go back and make sure everyone got them if maybe they missed it? And that's just one example,
Yeah.
but
So-
hearing, whatever.
Right, so they were waived for last year.
Yep,
Which doesn't really, help the child, right? But,
correct.
And so this year, we're conducting what we are supposed to conduct for this year. However, with that being said, even a nurse today did 6th grade vision, where we don't do vision in 6th grade anymore, but it was 5th grade who never got vision last year. So there were a couple schools that did that, but
That's what I was asking. Okay.
yeah, I mean, we're going to do the best we can
I
to
would-
get what's done this year done, because usually we start kindergarten in October. They're usually
Right.
done by October.
Right.
And then, but we haven't even started till
But
now.
you're along the same train of thought that I
Right,
am,
to
where
catch up.
we need to try to go back and get the kids we missed?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nurse Long. Appreciate it. Next up is the Multilingual Learners. Thank you, Ms. Veracruz.
Thank you. Good evening, Boa noite, Mayor Coogan, Superintendent Pons, school committee members. Welcome to the new board members and happy International Women's Month. My name is Fernanda Veracruz, the proud director of the Multilingual Department and a former English learner myself. Thank you for the opportunity to present the department's budget. Before I present the budget request, please allow me to provide a brief history of the department as well as students we serve. Of utmost importance in this role is the responsibility to foster collaboration that ultimately changes our educational approaches. Approaches that have reinforced a deficit narrative about English learners and immigrant origin groups, implicitly and explicitly from the historical policies in the United States. I'm happy to report that with the district's support, we have made substantial progress. I joined the district 6 years ago with the goal to primarily structure and systematize the department in 5 key areas: initial identification and placement, program design, instruction, teacher development, and family engagement. When it comes to student identification and placement, in 2016, 975 students, or 9.7% of students, were identified as English learners. Fall River is a gateway city, so we quickly realized that the number of identified English learners was not representative of students with limited English proficiency in our classrooms. The ESL English Assessment Specialist position at PACE was one of the first positions that the department advocated for. This position allowed us to structure and systematize the initial intake process and create procedures, protocols that allow us to correctly identify and place students in the appropriate programs. At the time, the department also advocated for the district to create the community relations facilitator role. The CRF role is central to this work. By law, and to the extent possible, we must communicate with families in the language that they understand best. Establishing these CRF positions and also contracting with Lionbridge has strengthened family engagement and enables the district to do an excellent job communicating with families in the 3 main languages that we serve. In terms of family engagement, I am happy to share that we now, 6 years later, we have a well-established LPAC that meets at least 5 times in the year. We also offer adult ESL classes, and we're actually about to start classes, and hopefully 2 cohorts. Our current numbers of identified students reflect the improvements to the initial identification and placement procedures, as well as family communication networks. As of this afternoon at 1 o'clock, we serve 2,149 English learners, or 20% K-12. The main languages are Spanish at 50.6%, Portuguese at 34.5%, and very recently Cape Verdean Creole at 6.31%, preceded by Khmer at 7%, and now at 2.3%. And I actually haven't visited or been to any Cambodian restaurants, and I definitely need to connect with that community before they leave, because at least they're not in our schools. These scholars are placed in either in the SEI mainstream, and currently we have 1,130 mainstream, or 52.6% of our ELs are SEI mainstream, or they are placed in the SEI foundational, and currently we have 1,019 students, or 47.4%, according to the English development. So in the foundational classrooms, we keep them until they're at a WIDA level, or English proficiency level of 3.0, and then we exit them to mainstream classrooms. The SEI foundational strand is in 5 of our elementary schools and also in all our middle schools. As you know, English learners are the fastest growing student population in this country's education system. It is a diverse group arriving at our schools from all corners of the globe, bringing their rich languages and cultures, which in my opinion can only strengthen our own communities. However, most of our English learners in Fall River Public Schools, as we know, are across the United States, are in fact born in the United States, and that is definitely a misconception that if they are born in the United States, they're not English learners. And of course, if they are in households where we don't speak English, they are coming to our schools with limited in English, so we do assess them, and it does happen that that's the largest group are students born in the United States. As the EL numbers continue to increase across the district, program design, quality instruction, and teaching development became the department's major priorities. More essential positions were advocated for a K-8 ESL coordinator, a K-5 foundational and dual language coordinator, a high school ESL department head, elementary, middle school, and high school language acquisition coaches. Now, I am happy to share that 6 years later, students benefit from these highly qualified staff with high levels of education and extensive experience in the field of second language education, second language acquisition, I should say. My team is off the chain, really, truly. And my team and I work closely with school leaders and teachers on how to more effectively support English learners using research-based methods. 2 examples that highlight this work include the opening of our brand new Spanish dual language program at Viveras, which we are very proud of, and I invite you to visit if you haven't had the opportunity. And also the piloting work of a co-teaching model at Henry Lord, and I certainly want to thank Dr. Bronhardt for reaching out to the department for the support, and it has been great work, and we hope that it's something that we will model across the district. We do understand it's an expensive model, tons of planning, but I myself strongly support a co-teaching model. In order to continue improving outcomes for students, the department is requesting the following. A FT clerk for the department. The position will alleviate the MLL department administrators from time spent on clerical work and allow more time from the district team to dedicate to curriculum design and instruction, programmatic compliance, etc. As the number of English learners continues to steadily increase in the district from 9.5% in 2016 to now 20%, a full-time office clerk will assist the director and the team in maintaining all state and or district record keeping and the documentation for compliance. The major tasks would include work with bookkeeping to process all purchase orders and invoices for the MLL department, maintain excellent records of family involvement, activities, surveys, funding, annual program evaluations, and communications to families, ensure compliance of district's family engagement program with all state and federal guidelines. This individual would contact families through phone calls, emails, in order to encourage participation in schools and districts' activities and events. And we do know that culturally, not that our families don't, that the education is not important to our families, but we do understand there's a cultural difference that sometimes keeps our families away from schools. So this person will be in constant contact with families and informing them of these events. I am happy to answer any questions you may have, so thank you so much.
Any questions? Ms. Rodriguez?
With the home language surveys, on this sheet, it says that this person would help make the survey process more valid and reliable. So is there an issue with the way that the surveys are being conducted? That's what that says to me, so that's why I'm trying to understand.
So, yes. So the position I'm actually advocating for is not a position to be at pace. As I understood, we only had one position in the budget, which would be the FTE clerk for the department. So what you're asking me for, it's something, I think it's on the wish list. We're not asking for that currently.
What I have in front of me.
That's your rationale.
I did, yes. So you want me to go through? No, I'm confused.
MLL clerk.
So we did, initially, I was actually asking, so because we have had some issues with the HLS, I had asked for someone that would be there working in collaboration, of course, with Pace and Sarah, our ESL assessment specialist there, and this person would really be fully involved, engaged, and would have the knowledge, understanding of guidance and regulations that this department follows. But I don't think that was put on the budget. What was put in the budget is the one that I just asked for, right?
The one we agreed upon was the MLL clerk at
Yes,
Center.
yes. And that's what I
Veracruz. That's
just
the one that
asked for.
We have here, exactly.
Yes. I think we add them together.
So,
I guess I'm confused, because I'm asking based on what's in front of me, which is the MLL clerk, that says that this person would work closely, that this person would streamline the connection between intake and the school placement by being the one person to conduct home language surveys with multilingual families, thus making the survey process more valid and reliable.
I think what happened when I sent my rationale, I had a rationale for a clerk, assistant clerk that would work with me and my team. I also had at some point requested this person to be at Pace, and we're not looking at that right now. We're just looking at the full-time position,
what
the clerk.
we are looking at is the MLL clerk that is going to be based out of Pace to help. That's what's in the rationale, that's what we had discussed. We didn't discuss, that's what is in the rationale. We can have another discussion.
I'm going to yield.
Yep.
Mr. Aguirre?
I'm certainly, I guess I was confused, but I'm not confused anymore. The superintendent said that we're going to have a MLL clerk at Pace. And as far as I'm concerned, superintendent's the boss. And the superintendent says that's what we're getting, and that's what we're going to have, that's what we're going to have.
I was just trying to clarify with the question.
I get it, but if the superintendent just told this school committee that she put in the budget an MLL position at the Pace Center, that's what she's putting in. You going like this saying, no, she's the boss. So I don't understand why you're going back and forth. She's the boss. She just said, this is what's in the budget. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at this saying, why are we even having this discussion? This is what's before us. So Mrs. Rodrick asked the question, making the survey process more valid and reliable. This is at some point, Madam Superintendent, this came from Mrs. Cruz, right?
Right.
So the question is, what does that mean? More valid and reliable? That implies that it's not valid and reliable. Can you expound on that?
So let me, Mr. Aguirre, with all due respect, one, I was not shaking my head to disagree with the superintendent, as I would never do that. When I was asked the question, when I came in front of the superintendent and the team talking about the budget, I had given a couple of positions, including the one that I've been asked the question for. What the department also asked for a full-time position, clerk position with the department, the MLL department, which is in huge need. And so in making those decisions, Fernando, which one you rather, right now it feels like we in need of a full-time MLL department clerk. If we were to also get a Pace clerk that would work, and that would be great. But if we have to choose one or the other, I thought on the budget, when it said MLL clerk, it was the position for the MLL department, not the second one for Pace.
I understand.
But I can also definitely
No, I
answer
understand.
that
So when I asked earlier, I asked another, I think it was the nurse or somebody I asked, what are the positions that were denied that somebody requested? On that list is the MLO clerk that you're speaking of. So to everybody on the team, superintendent, whoever the finance folks were, it would seem very clear that that was denied and this was going to go forward. So that being said, what I'm just trying to get to is this position is going to now be, but that question needs to be addressed.
Sure, I absolutely
Sure.
can address. So,
Please.
I'm sorry. Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, so it says here, thus making the survey process more valid and reliable. And this is, let me read the whole thing so that you know. An MLL intake clerk at Pace would streamline the connection between intake and school ELE program placement by being the one person to conduct home language surveys with multilingual families, parentheses, thus making the survey process more valid and reliable. I'm just asking you to expound on what that means.
Sure.
Because I'm thinking it implies that the current process is unreliable and invalid.
Sure.
Or
So,
invalid.
yes, so for the last few years, since I came to the district, again, trying to, anyway, so what's happening currently is that various clerks at PACE conduct the HLS, which is the home language process. Now, that has been problematic because it is supposed to be conducted first by an ESL, by a licensed ESL person, and secondly, it is supposed to be a survey, a questionnaire. And what we've noticed is the way it's being done, or has been done in the past, it's been handled to parents, and many a times without the translation. So we have parents, and we know there's some level of stigma still in this country around bilingualism, multiculturalism. So the parents get that message, and when they see, what language does your child first learn to speak? What language do you speak to your child? What language does your child speak with siblings? Blah, blah, blah. They write English, 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 English. Because they think the answer that we want is English. We just want the truth, so we can best serve the students. So with that, so that's the issue we're seeing is that they handle it, it's not in the native language, they just fill it in, they put English because they think that's what we want, and so we're missing kids. So kids then, we are unable, so if the HLS says all English, we cannot assess students. And
Okay, so you said something about it has to be a certified ESL teacher to do the survey. Is that the law?
It doesn't have to be, I think it was the guidance, So either that or trained by a licensed person because of linguistic questions that are there.
Yeah, so I just heard you say that it had to be, so had and suggested is two different things, so that's
Sure.
where I'm looking at. I've gotten some, it's ironic that we're talking about this because for about a year now, or more than a year, a couple of years now, I've had parents tell me, can you explain to me what this letter is?
Yes.
And they say this letter and it says, the lady feels like, what in the heck they sending this to me for? I speak English. We're Portuguese descent, but I speak English, my husband speaks English, my mother speaks English, my child speaks English, everybody speaks English. Why are they like asking me this, or and they felt to me like the district was forcing them to take the services. And I said to them, let me try to find out, and this was when Dr. Malone was here, and it wasn't, the ideal time to get the info, but that's always bothered me, and I've always wondered, like, are we over-identifying our children for these services? I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
When I get people that say that thing to me that I just explained, that lends itself to maybe we are over-identifying our students. And I think you're saying the opposite. We're under-identifying.
So, yes, it could go one way or the other, but the good thing is that actually we have, so the issue comes when we don't conduct it actually as a questionnaire, a survey to have probing questions. And so we see a last name, Rodrigues, we automatically assume that perhaps this parent needs information in Portuguese, and that should not be so. So if we actually ask the questions, and I'm speaking with a family with the Portuguese name, but with probing questions, I am going to realize this is a second-generation family. This is a third-generation family. This family doesn't need a letter in Portuguese.
So what would you do in that case? Would they be identified or are they not?
If I'm talking, so let me give you an example. So at one point, there was one HLS, not here, another district, where The HLS was handed to the parent. The parents is filling in, does your child speak any other language? The parent said yes and said Spanish. Did some investigation, come to find out the parent answered yes because the daughter watched Dora the Explorer. And because there's another language indicated in the HLS, right, we automatically assess. We don't have, in this case, we don't need parents' approval. And because this child was kindergarten, and there was also language development, right? They're just starting to learn. This child actually came through the assessment as an English learner. And that's unacceptable. Because now we identifying a student because the parent made that mistake in answering Spanish because she watches Dora the Explorer. The child developmentally came as an English learner, and now we have a kid that shouldn't have been identified. And what ends up happening, it's very difficult once they're identified to get rid of that label, and so they have to take this assessment that you're probably familiar with, which is called the access, where we assess for language development until they meet a criteria of 4.2 and of overall 4.2 and a literacy of 3.9. So that's very problematic. We having these kids that shouldn't have been identified, and because of that error, which could have been taken care of by asking questions and not giving the parent this paper to fill it in, now we've created this whole issue for this family. So I am absolutely with you in saying that we have to be extremely careful so we are not either over-identifying or under-identifying.
Yeah,
and it all starts with that form, the English language survey. And that's why I've created a lot of...
I hear what you're saying. My gut tells me that we're over-identifying. That's based on what I hear in the community from people like the story that I told you. I think that we're over-identifying. But in any event, in my opinion, we have trained people. We train them up through the PACE Center. They do the work here, and that should be valid and reliable.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
If we did it at the PACE Center, like, you know, with a trained person, I don't understand why it's problematic. It shouldn't be problematic, let's just say. So let's figure out a way that it doesn't, would be my personal suggestion.
So we have, the department has done 2 trainings at PACE on how to conduct these HLSs. So it's not a lack of information, and so I am...
And you're still saying it's problematic?
It's getting better, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the superintendent can try to get that done, but the question that my last question, Mrs. Rodriguez does have a question, but I'll just finish so she can take over if need be. When you came here 6 years ago, I always like to do a historical perspective on what we're doing, what we're spending money on, what it looked like. So if, I'm not asking for the answer now, but via the superintendent, if you could send something out to say, what did the Fall River Public Schools in your department look like 6 years ago, before you came? What did it look like for budget, and what did it look like for FTEs? And then what does it look like now? Because I think it would be, I've said this before, that the money that we're spending and resources are needed, but it's tremendous, the difference, in my opinion. From where we were to where we are now, like financially, budgetarily, is not even, it's way up there. So if you could get something, you know, like that, and I think the superintendent can send that to us in a couple weeks or a month or whatever, but I do think it's valid. But please take that story that I told you as serious as you have to, because that same story's been told by a number of people, and they keep getting these letters that look like as if we're trying to like force them. So I can always try to find it and send it to Mrs. Ponce to send to you, but you probably know what I'm talking about.
We have to, so after the access that I just mentioned, the assessment of communication, and so it's an assessment of I'll give you the acronym in a second. I'm missing the C. After we receive the scores, there's an annual letter that goes home to inform the parents of their scores, as well as what will happen. Once they meet a certain score, then they become formal English language learners, so we have to inform the parents. I do understand that parents sometimes might say, oh, my kid doesn't speak English, you know, he's here. We need to really understand that, again, going to that stigma, and that's what English only has created for this country, you know, where we not, and I think, you know, it's changing, where we don't value bilingualism, right? So that's the history. And so with that, we have parents who actually, the kids need the support, but refuse the support, say, I don't speak English, I don't speak another language, please don't send me that letter home. And yet when the student is in the classroom and in front of the teacher, and the teacher said, come on, Fernanda, look at this kid. So there's a distinction between the types of language, right? And we understand there's a social language and there's an academic language. So I think most times the parents are looking at the social language. He speaks English, what are you talking about? Look at him, he's at recess, look at his friends, they only speak English. There's a huge difference between those two types of language, and what the language the kids need in the classroom is academic language. And then when they come with only the social language, they cannot access text.
Yeah, is there any requirements beyond the, like a form letter going home, to contact parents to talk about changes, programs, anything on an annual basis? Is there regulations about that?
Yes, so when we assess the students and they qualify and we identify them, we meet with the parent right then and there and explain the programs, and the parents can either accept or decline. We don't force the program with any parents. What we need to show the state is that we've had that conversation. What we need to show the Department of Justice is that we've had this conversation and offered these opportunities.
Was it annual? Is it one child or is it annual?
It's one, yeah. So
annual, so you have to call every parent. So if you have 1,000 students.
We're not calling parents.
You don't call?
No.
What's the regulations? Was that the regulation that you have to call them, or you're supposed to?
No. We mail the letter. The regulation is that we have to mail them.
Just the letter is sufficient, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we have to mail, and the regulation is that we don't send them in the backpack. They have to be mailed.
Mailed out. All right, thank you. I do support this position for the Pace Center. Thank you, I yield.
I just have just a comment about that. So that actually happened to my daughter. My daughter English is her first language. She's fluent in English. There's no question about that. She was brought in for, and I had discussed this before, but she was brought in for a screening, despite having a phone call, 3 phone calls with folks that were going to assess her, and me explaining repeatedly that she does in fact speak English and there are 0 concerns. They still brought her in and assessed her and said, oh, there are no concerns. Obviously, I had already shared that multiple times. In order for her not to come in, I was told that I needed to write a letter and decline the assessment formally, which seems problematic for a family who really doesn't need to do that. Like, she was misidentified. Maybe based on our last name, I don't know. You know, does she understand and speak some Portuguese? Absolutely, she does. But English is her first language, right? I'm a first generation. She's a second generation. But we still receive letters asking when would be a good time to reassess her, as if she were not already in kindergarten.
That's a problem.
Yeah, so that's why I'm bringing this up.
I have to.
Hence my question about the home language survey, because I have a kindergartner this year, and this is the experience that we've had.
Yeah.
And obviously, she should have never been even screened.
Can I just ask you a question? Do you remember noting another language on the home language survey?
I remember there's a question that says, is she exposed to any other language, right? But being exposed to another language doesn't mean that, it did not ask, the question that I answered did not say, does she speak another language? No, she doesn't speak another language. You know, she can do her colors and she can do her numbers in Portuguese, but she is not fluent in Portuguese by any means. It says, is she exposed? Is she exposed? Absolutely she is.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that she's and when my concern is that I had 2 or 3 conversations with folks over the phone, that process that you were just explaining, but still had to bring her in for this assessment, or I had to do this whole process of like writing a letter. Now, I have the luxury, I live very close to the PACE Center, so it wasn't really a problem in that sense, except I also had to bring my other child with me who's disabled. It's frowned upon to leave them at home. We don't do that, right? So I'm just saying, like, that can create a barrier and already create a sense of, like, what's happening here if a kid like mine, who is not bilingual, and by all means, I would love for her to be bilingual, right? That is something that we feel very strongly about. We are very supportive of multilingual learners. My parents are immigrants, right? Like, this is the background I come from. And so absolutely, that's an important piece of my personal identity that I think should be shared. But it also takes away resources from kids who actually need them, especially when we've had that conversation already multiple times before she came through the door.
I am sorry that you had to go through that, your child had to go through that. If I was conducting that HLS, which at one time in my life I did, I would ask for the questions. I would ask probing questions, because the word expose, right, is broad. So who is she speaking with? Because what we find many a times when we say they're exposed is, oh, she visits grandma every 2 weeks.
No, she's with
I'm
Vavo
not
and
going to
Vavu
assess a
every
student.
day.
Say it again?
She's with Vavo and Vavu every day,
But-
who both speak English.
Right, so, but I'm saying in some cases, I could
Right.
ask that question, further question, and I would find out, oh no, she's exposed to it because she visits Vavo every 2 weeks, or,
Right.
and I am absolutely not going to assess that student. So this has been my issue since I came to this district, where I have asked multiple times, have had various meetings for us to take a look at this HLS and how it's being conducted, because it can create these issues of over-identifying or under-identifying, or having you come in and bring your child who is disabled. And so those are the conversations that I've had at the district level that, you know, we are trying to clean up. So when I asked for this position, which I got confused, I thought there was another position that was on the budget, and I apologize for that. But I also asked for this position for these reasons, and this person would be actually trained by the MLL department, would be fully, you know, I would make sure this person is aware and knows the guidance, right? So it would be this direct contact with the MLL department, so these things are not happening, because it is problematic, and I don't agree with that. I absolutely would never want to over-identify a student who shouldn't be identified. I understand the job. I know how to do the job. I've been doing the job for 20 years, and those were some of the things that we've cleaned up along the way from another district that I was trying to clean up here. That's our #1 form, and folks need to understand it's a federal state form. And once these students are identified, it takes close to 4 years for them to get out of that labor. So it is very problematic for families, and I'm with the families that are coming to Mr. Gia and complaining, absolutely. So it's about, so if we've been given this position, I'm very happy that I think we can definitely continue to clean up the process.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that
but
was where my question was coming from. And so again, like, you know, I want to look at how we are appropriating services and make sure that we're doing them with fidelity, because, you know, when staff are telling me, you know, you have to bring your child in, and I spoke to my boss about this, and yes, you still need to bring her in, you know, and my boss said, you need to write this letter, and that's the only way, like, you abdicating that evaluation, that's the only way to get around that. I have the luxury of being able to do that. I have the privilege of being able to do that, but not every family does. And so not to make it more difficult on a family, you know, this is where I agree that we need to do a better job with this.
Absolutely. I think there's too many people doing the HLS. From my experience, that would be this one person. This one person will do the HLS, and then if it's all English, you'd go to the clerk set pace. And then if it indicates another language, it goes to the MLL clerk who does the assessments. Nice and clean. When we have too many pots on, you know, too many hands on the pot, and that's when we're going to start finding these issues.
With that, I yield.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to be really quick. First of all, thank you for the work you do and
Thank you.
your time here tonight. understand this, maybe you guys can help me. When students are enrolled in our Fall River Public Schools, initial enrollment, whether it's kindergarten, pre-K, 8th grade, whatever, isn't there some form that indicates what the child's language is on that form? Is that what you're going by? So let's say a parent does put English and Portuguese, you're assuming, okay, now we have to evaluate this student to determine if English is their second language, right? Okay, and as far as talking about streamlining the services better than they are now, that's basically, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to, make sure I understand what you're saying. Right now, we have a lot of hands in the pot. And when you're completing these surveys, some people, because some of this can be, somewhat subjective when having these conversations, that everyone, even though they're following the same rule book, quote unquote, they're understanding the information differently, and so it's kind of going all over the place as opposed to one person. So it's getting done now, but it could be done better if we had one person. And then my last question, or if you can clarify with me, Mr. Aguirre was talking about letters being mailed to parents, and you said that there's some regulation that requires you to mail letters, but then you mentioned handing to a parent. So is there one form, is there two forms, and is there a form that if we feel that the child, may have English as a second language, is that a phone call to review, to go over that form with the parent, to get more information, or is it literally just we send it to them and they send it back?
So hopefully we're not sending it to them. So if we begin with this HLS, the parents should be in front of us, and we should be conducting an interview. Okay. From there, we either assess or don't. All English, we're not going to assess. All, if there's other languages indicated, we do.
Then you go along with assessments to see what the child's need is.
So the parent came in, if the parent has the child right there, we'll say, we'll assess, and the parent said yes. If the parent at that moment, even after asking this question, answering this question, I don't want my child assessed, the parent has the right, as a parent, to decline the assessment and therefore services that this child could have been. And then right there's a notification letter. So we note the parent declined. That's the letter I was talking about.
So that's the letter you're talking about that's getting mailed
home. And then after they receive the access scores in May, then we produce this letter that has to go home by August to let the parents know of their scores and program that they will be placed in next year.
So again, if a family indicates more than one language on an enrollment form or that type of form, automatically somebody is going to either meet with the parent or have a conversation with the parent to determine if this is in fact real or if they're just watching Dora the Explorer kind of situation. And if it is in fact a situation that they're a multilingual household, then it would go on to have a further conversation and an assessment with the child.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And am I accurate with also saying we cleared up, this is going to be at pace?
Yes, this is the priority.
This is the priority at pace, but you're looking for, in the future, having a position like this also in your department? Is that correct?
I would very much appreciate it. Right now, we are being supported.
That's what I meant. Superintendent,
Yes, that right now, that is not part of the plan. I think that we have to assess and see what our needs are and prioritize.
Okay, but I was just asking. Okay, and again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Aguiar.
I want to be as brief as I can. I think that when we look at positions, we talked budget July 1, but I think we're in the heat right now of enrollments and stuff. So what I would like to have the superintendent do is either spend some money if need be ahead of, sooner than later, rather than wait till July. It sounds to me like we have the Pace Center is in charge of all the registration now, all across the whole district, which we're trying to streamline, which I agree with. To me, when that happens, the director of the Pace Center should be in charge of all of these things. Certifications, the home language surveys, the nursing thing, everything. So that we have one person that's actually doing, making those decisions, would be my personal opinion. But if we need another person, why wait till July 1 if we could get, I don't know who's doing the services now, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. It says that, what we talked about before, it could be more valid and reliable, whatever. So all I'd ask the superintendent to do is not wait if need be, but maybe in 30 days, report back to the committee about what the status is of all this stuff, and then we can, I mean, I could ask a million questions on this, but I'd rather you, 30 days, just come back and you let us know how wonderful it's going up there. Thank you, I yield.
I do have one question, or one comment on Kevin's 6 years numbers. Could we see the enrollment with that?
Yep.
You know what I mean, as it goes, because I think that that's also a key factor. Thank you, Ms. Veracruz.
Thank you.
Next up is technology. Now, a lot of this we did go over the other night.
Right,
so-
I was just going to say that Mr. Cabral presented all these positions when he did his plan, so I'm not sure if you want him to go through every single one again, or if you just want to ask him questions about that.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Crowe? Mr.
Not a question, just a comment. Based on the vote, the last meeting a couple days ago, that we're going to have a technology subcommittee that's formed. I promise you that we're going to have that as soon as possible, once we get through this process. The only comment I would make, and I think this is important, basically the one I just made before, Mr. Cabral had a bunch of positions. Some of those positions are needed, in my opinion, now, because we're in the middle of all this stuff. So I don't want to necessarily wait for July 1 to say, let's do all of these positions. But I would personally be fine with the superintendent saying, based on the budget, based on Mr. Cabral's opinion, I think we need to do this now, this now, this now. We end up in this district usually training everybody, we do what we got to do, and then they go somewhere else. So if there's urgent need, I would say let's not even wait, but I'm guessing early April, mid-April, we'll have the first technology meeting. But I'm going to speak for myself. I think that we do have needs, tremendous needs that we could fill, or take some time. And if we can't fill them with the right person, then don't hire them. But I, for one, would support that going forward. With that, I yield.
Anything further? Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Cabral. Facilities and operations. I'm assuming that's going to be Mr. Pacheco. First area is custodial.
There you are. Mr. Mayor, Madam Superintendent, we have a few needs in facilities and operations.
Mr.
And
Chairman, sorry to interrupt. Can I
Mr.
interrupt for a
Aguirre.
second? Mr. Pacheco, I'm not, sorry to interrupt, but you've got a gentleman sitting next to you that I'm not sure anybody knows. Maybe we could just get an introduction of who
That's exactly
that
what was
is.
about to happen.
Okay, sorry, I just,
That's okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. So at the table with me is Emmanuel Monis. He is the new Director of Maintenance Services, and we are very pleased that he stepped up. I know Mr. Monis for quite some time. I'm not going to tell you why, but I'm going to tell you that it'll make me feel old if I do. So he is going to bring that department to another level that I know he will, and there's a lot that he has on his plate. And actually, I might as well have him do the maintenance piece. We have a couple of positions in maintenance, and I will let him speak on those items.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. Basically, as Ken stated the last time, we're looking for a new member of the division as far as for plumbing, HVAC, and then labor. Very much needed a laborer in our department to be able to get things started, get things moving. Basically, just to be ahead of all our licensees in all our departments as far as maintenance goes. The biggest thing needed is an additional plumber, HVAC, and strongly maintenance laborer, for sure.
Any questions on the maintenance piece with Mr. Moniz? Mr. Aguirre?
The only question that I would have is we referred this to the facility subcommittee, so just looking to the future, I understand what you're saying, you need somebody because we have the bunch of trades, we have a bunch of work orders, you have basically a system. So you're new to the job. One of the things that I'm looking at is, were we maximizing our resources? So we spend X amount of dollars, just like in a school, we have X amount of resources. Are we getting a good bang for our buck relative to the work? So one thing that I would ask for, regardless of whether you have this new position, is to do some sort of analysis of what happened before. So before you got hired, I'm a licensed plumber, whatever, and then I would do X work orders, some kind of analysis of how much a work is done by a plumber or by a carpenter, by some sort of system. And then, so we can proceed to see in the future, like, what are we getting? Are we doing it differently? So now if we add this position, we can say, okay, we were able to do this, like 100 jobs a week or something. Now we can do 150 jobs. Some data relative to the work orders would be my only request from you and the department. And I'm sure the facility subcommittee will scrutinize that position, but I personally sat in on the interview. You did an excellent job. Welcome to the district, and I think you're going to do great things, so happy to support this. Thank you.
Anything further?
I just have a comment.
Mrs. Rodrick.
I just want to point out, I know it's really hard to come and speak before a group of people that you don't really know, haven't worked with before, so I just want to say thank you for coming and doing that. Speaking for myself, it's really hard to do that. So again, I just want to say thank you for coming up and doing that.
Thank you so much.
Especially when we're looking down on you.
I know. It's like such an awkward dynamic.
Not good.
Mr. Aguirre?
I don't know if this is his question, but the maintenance, like equipment and stuff, is that going to be under your presentation, Mr. Pacheco?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll hold my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Moniz?
So the one thing about this maintenance position, and we will be going to subcommittee over it, we think that it might be a great idea, and again, my opinion, is that we try and bring someone in from the construction craft group, one of those students, a senior, and put them in the role that they've been trained for the last 3 years at Durfee. I think it's perfect. It's a perfect fit. It will also allow that student to be in the trade. In my former life at the other school that I will not mention, there's nothing better than hands-on training for anybody in a trade or any kind of work, school-to-work situation. And it can't be substituted. We can't teach it in an environment, in a classroom, in a shop setting. You do the best you can to get basics, but the actual hands-on cannot be duplicated. And the more that particular experience is authentic, the better. Okay, I can teach kids how to solder, but when they're live and there's water squirting in their face because they didn't do a good job, that's a lesson. Unlike practice. So I think this opportunity for us to bring in a student into a ground level position, so this is not a high-paying position, but it is a very good job at a good pay for this kind of work. It might be an avenue, and we'll discuss that in depth with the committee when the time comes. So as part of the maintenance group, they will be adding some equipment, some not necessarily hand tools, but some power equipment for the individuals who are going to be taking some of these new roles. The plumbing position that we're asking for is to put us in a position to have 4 plumbers. We will have 4 electricians. We will have 4 carpenters, 2 painters, and the laboring position. And it'll allow us to have that group, and also 2 HVAC mechanics, and in the future, hoping for more HVAC and mechanics. The goal is to stop subcontracting all of this work out and to bring it in-house. There's a lot of reasons for that. Familiar faces with the students, someone who they're comfortable with, is what we like to do, as opposed to strangers, people that we have to have all of the query checks and everything done before they come into our buildings. That's all time-consuming items. In the case of an emergency, we don't have that time to wait, so they're supervised, so we have someone watching someone work, and it's not an ideal situation. So bringing our own people in is the best way to handle this maintenance work, and that is the goal of building this department into something that can handle 2 million square feet of space on a daily basis. The equipment, again, is not high-priced equipment that we're looking for. It may be pipe machines for the plumbers, the equipment that the electricians need, where we're going to start doing some different testing of all of our equipment in the newer but older buildings that requires them to suit up, to do flash tests and different things to see if our equipment is going to react the way we want it to react during power outages and other situations. So that work can be brought in-house. Those are expensive tests that have to be done if we have to bring that service out. So we just need to provide the equipment for our employees to do some of that work. And that's about it in a nutshell on the maintenance department. Again, another question that came up the other night was the cost of the additional work at the PACE Center. So the additional work at the PACE Center that's being handled in-house is a major savings on the district side. I would say it's in the 350 range after doing some of that work today and taking a good look at the project. That is the kind of savings we're looking to basically have looking forward in all of in the buildings as we do some major renovations. Some work we can handle, and some work will always have to be subbed out. But the goal is to try and handle as much as we can in-house.
All right, you want to go back to custodial?
I can do custodial right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Larrabee, I missed you.
Just a question. I just want to back up a little bit. When you spoke of the Durfee student possibly, working and as a craftsman, is that what it is, a craftsman? I don't know.
It's a maintenance
lingo.
laborer.
I'm not
Yes.
up on that lingo.
Yes.
But I know CTE Director Sylvia and Mr. Damaris also were talking about the co-op teacher that they're looking for. Is that something that could be cohesive with like co-op students at Durfee, maybe doing that co-op in our district? Is that something
Sure, so
that
this
we
would
could
be, so we would be looking, co-op is normally a process before graduation.
Right, that, I figured I'd bring
What
it
this
up.
process would be, because we're looking for it in July, this would already be a graduate.
Okay.
But in the future, we could.
Yeah, no, I
we
understood
could
that,
be in
but I
part
figured
of
I'd
that
ask it.
co-op.
Right.
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 Because there are certain, most of the CTE programs at Durfee would lend itself well to co-op education.
Right.
It's just a
Right.
matter of trying to coordinate all of that, the paper side of that, all of that work side, that would need to be done ahead of time. And that person that Mr. Damaris is asking for, and the director, Sylvia, is very, very important.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that would be an opportunity for our district to have some of the kids on co-op
Yes.
now coming out of our CTE program to be working with somebody like Mr. Monis with all his experience. You know, is that going to be an opportunity? Okay, thank you. I yield.
Mr. Aguirre?
Related to that, I thought there was a rule in the school system, maybe it's just an unwritten rule, that you had to be out of school for several years before you came back to work, like as a sub or something, is that?
I'm not sure. If that is the case, then obviously we would eliminate our ability to bring in any students in CTE programs. I'm not sure. That could well exist. I
Or
haven't.
maybe it's the high, like, the age bracket, like if you're out of the high school,
Sure.
like, instead of going, but that, you were saying that, I was thinking, you have, obviously you need 2 years to sub, but you just can't you can't graduate from Durfee and then apply to be a security guard, with the kids you just were with a year earlier, I think, but the question on the lease, rental, $150,000 for building rentals and leases, that must be a building that I'm not aware, like.
That's our rental.
of
That's our rental for storage.
For just the
That's-
storage?
That is the rental building for the mill that we rented for our logistics, all of our supplies.
Just recent, like that,
Yes,
and that's
why it's
150,000
new.
for the year, or that's just the increase?
that's brand new. There is some other items in that rental, but there is an increase. I want to say that contract, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, was in the mid to upper 80s, if not 90.
Yeah, so that's
So the
not,
remainder is a rental of possibly the Valtran storage units that we have at the different schools, but
So I'll speak to that. So the Jefferson Realty, the storage facility is for next year is slated for $115,000. That's how much that is. And the rest is slated for the Valtran stuff that Ken's referring to.
so, but this is only 150 total, I think.
Yep, that's all it is. The total is $115,000 for.
Oh, 115, I thought you said 158.
For the facility next year.
Sorry, the tech not.
Sorry,
I
I'm
thought
not-
it
I'm
said-
not speaking loud enough.
I thought it said 158, so it's within this 150 line item. Of
Exactly.
those things, it's not.
Yeah.
The only other one I noticed, and it's a big number, $500,000 for water, sewer, and CSO. So that's because we, like everybody else, you gotta pay, right? Like that's, so we're not getting it free, we have to pay. That's a pretty good,
Every department pays their share. That's our share for next year.
yep. And you had said, Mr. Pacheco, you don't have many expenses for material, equipment and stuff?
for equipment on the
Maintenance side.
the maintenance side, as far as not like custodial.
Yep. The big number, I think, on this was, you're also asking to increase, I think, Durfee security by 8,
By 12.
by 12, or is 8 for a shift or something like that?
Yeah,
So-
it's 8 first shift, 2 second shift, and 2 floaters.
And obviously, you must have like, recommendations on why that is.
I do.
It just seems like a lot, just on the face of it, but it's a big building, I get all that. So if we could get even a one-pager just to verify like what it is. I looked in here, there's some part-timers, other part-timers not. If they go up full, do we not need them anymore? But you don't need to answer that now, but I think if we get an explanation. We also are funding the equipment to come in, so that's an additional piece. So that was part of the rationale, but.
Right, well, the equipment piece for the security, the new system, has to be manned. Okay, that's not being manned by school personnel, that's being manned by security. So there are no administrators actually working on those. There are administrators available, there are administrators at the entrances. However, the equipment is being operated by security personnel. So there are 3, maybe 4, but depending on if it's a double lane or a single lane that we have set up. And they are bag checking when the alarms goes off, that there may be something on a particular student. So it requires extra people in the morning to do that. When that work is done, now these people are going to hopefully replace some of the administrators who have acquired duties through the size of the building and the configuration of the building that Principal Damaris has been using his people for. So these additional security guards will help with that particular piece. Also, the second shift, this would allow for after-school events, after-school programming, to have security guards throughout that building. And the floaters are going to be used to augment the services we provide at the other schools in the district.
Yeah, if you can just get something, you told me things today that I wasn't aware of, but I think if we know what it is, we have those, then we have 600,000 in SROs, we should get a game plan of and I'm sure you already have that, why we're asking for them. So
Sure.
with that, I yield. Thank you.
So are you going to go back to custodial now?
I can do custodial now.
We got maintenance and security done. Unless
Maintenance,
someone else has a
security,
question. No?
yes. I've got custodial. So we're requesting 2 junior custodians for Durfee, 1 junior custodian floater for the district. So it's 3 custodial positions that we're adding to our current roster. We do have some custodians, some custodial positions that are not filled, as we do with security and other items. Now, mind you, those positions, We've been trying to fill them as we go along, but it's very difficult to, to fill some of these positions as quickly as we would like to. The need for Durfee High School is that the square footage is extremely high on each individual person. So there were a lot of areas in the old building that didn't require daily cleaning. The penthouse above the storage unit near the kitchen. So that area was storage of light bulbs, different items that are not used on a daily basis. So that area wasn't a custodial area, so to speak. The storage area underneath it was a nutrition area that was used for storage, another area. So all of that square footage in the old building, as it slid over to the new building, these areas in the new building are all needing to be cleaned. So there are no areas that we don't have custodial coverage in them. So we try to keep that custodial number to about 28,000 square feet per person. However, at Durfee, that number creeps up into the 38,000 in some areas. Also, with that custodial position at Durfee, we have the autonomous floor machines. So what that'll do is a custodian who has the hallways at Durfee may not have their full square footage classroom cleanup. With the autonomous machines, this will allow those machines to work simultaneously with that custodian as that he or she are cleaning rooms. That machine will be cleaning the hallways at the same time. And then the work would be duplicated on the other side of the building. When that custodian needed that floor machine, it would go over and work with the other side. The floor machine has conversation with that custodian, so if there's an issue, it texts the custodian to let him know that there's an issue in the area. It couldn't get by, there's something wrong with the machine, it would let that person know. So it's not like that machine is running without being monitored. It is being monitored by the person who that machine is assigned to for that particular day. Durfee is a building that is easier to clean in the matter that it doesn't have a lot of nooks and crannies in the hallways and things. So it allows these machines to do a great job in that particular building. We've tested out a few of them in the old building, and it's quite something to watch it operate without a person, once it learns the route, so to speak. So that is the major equipment purchase for the custodial side. However, we do upgrades yearly. We have some material in stock, and we do have lists. I know there may have been a request, and I can get these over to everyone via email, but the shape of the equipment that we have, if it's in poor condition, then that material, then that is scheduled to be replaced, and each school will receive anything that has been marked poor. But it is rated excellent, good, fair, poor, and the equipment is also rated whether it's commercial or a lower grade. A lot of times in the past, because of money shortages, some of our older equipment that we have was not necessarily commercial. All the equipment that we're purchasing now is all commercial rated. Our snow blowers are designed for what we ask them to design for, so we have a particular model that we use. It also allows us to keep all the parts on hand, so we're not trying to mix match a bunch of pieces of equipment. So all of that stuff is in place, and we do have a small list of supplies that'll run about $10,000 of things that we will be upgrading, smaller items. I did say that the custodians, we do have one junior custodian that's going to float across the district, so attendance, vacations, hand in hand, but we also have a situation where we may have an open area that we can't fill. This person would be able to give some time to that area. Also, we do have some part-time positions that are not filled. Part-time positions are how we would really function on a regular basis, and we would want to have that ability to have someone to go over there. We don't want to lock someone into a position, but we may want to put someone there for 2 hours, 4 hours, depending on the need.
Any questions on the custodial positions? Mr. Aguirre?
When you talk about the, I'm reading something that says senior custodian floater.
Yep.
What do they do? So do they fill in if it says floater?
So it's
and-
not a new position.
No, I'm
No.
just saying as a general rule.
Right, so
Do-
they would, but the senior custodian floater, by contractual language, is only used during the day. That's the language that was adopted when these seniors became.
But what I'm saying is, can they clean an area? So I'm a
Yes.
junior at this school and I'm out, and the senior, if we
Yes.
got nobody else, the senior floater can actually come in and take my area for the day?
During the day,
During the day,
yes.
The,
Not take it, but they would do it for that day.
for the day, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So you have in here, it looks like an assistant director of custodial services?
That's been a
Open.
position, that's been around. Jim Medeiros, who held that position, retired over a year ago, and that position has been in the budget.
But then we filled a position,
So
at some point Jimmy was doing, Mr.
Jimmy was
Munson-
doing some of my work and still doing some of work for custodial. So on me, I thought that when Mr. McCluskey retired, who was the engineering manuals role before we changed it. So he did a lot more than just that. He also wrote the specs for a lot of the work in the buildings. When he retired, we took that position on, I took that position on, gave some of the work to Joe Correa, gave some of the work to Jim. Jim did the day-to-day triage, and Joe did the other work, and I took on the procurement side. That position, when Jim left, I didn't want that position to exist as a dual role, so we created this role to take care of maintenance. Maintenance in itself is enough work for one person to
Being
do.
custodial?
The maintenance piece. This piece is what remains. So what the custodial side has is a supervisor of personnel, totally different from an assistant director, an assistant administrator. The position we have that is held is a kind of a split shift, second shift, first shift. That person is strictly after personnel, making sure that everyone is doing what they need to do, going from school to school, does some work on the first shift, but not many days, and then some work on the second.
Yep, but it's vacant.
It is
So-
vacant, and it
so-
will be filled, I'm hoping. It's
Yeah.
funded, and I'd like it to be filled.
That's my point.
Yes.
Is that it's been open for a while. We've been hearing about, like, there's this open position, and it hasn't been filled, but Jim retired a long time ago. So this has been.
And this is the new gym.
But I'm saying, this position, when he was doing it
Yes.
way back when, has been vacant, in my opinion, for far too long. The supervisor, I think, is doing a good job of holding people accountable, doing what she needs to do, and we have a vacancy. Then at one point, I believe, we were told about a day shift custodial supervisor getting hired.
Right. Well, I'm trying to find the mix. I'm actually trying to find what formula works. I did not believe that the old formula worked with the new buildings and the technology in the buildings and the amount of new equipment that is stretched across the district and the process cleaning that is across the district. So my experiment over the last 2-3 years has come to the conclusion that the personnel wasn't the problem as much as the amount of duties that each person had. And some people were overloaded with duties and others didn't have enough. So this piece of adding this director of maintenance is a lesser position than Mr. McCluskey held way back when. He's been gone, I think, for 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And the current position that is vacant is going to be just a little different than Mr. Medeiros's.
Yeah, so, given just my opinion of and I've been here for a long time to see a lot of the stuff that goes on, the way I look at it is, we have a director of custodial services.
Yes.
We have an assistant director of custodial services, and then a supervisor. The bottom line is that those folks need to hold accountable the custodial services to make sure we're getting a good bang for our buck, and they're holding people accountable to do their work.
Yes.
That's what I personally feel. And then when we have a vacancy during the day, I think it just needs to be filled, would be my opinion. It should have been filled probably already. But when I look at the structure, in my view, we have Mr. Monis is going to be the maintenance guy, and everything's going to fall on him. If the maintenance department's a mess and the people aren't doing what they need to do, or whatever it is, they're not efficient, it's on him. When I look at the custodial side, it's Mr. Correa. It's on him.
Yes.
So it's very simple for us to see. We're not doing the day-to-day operations. But when we see the structure, the org chart, which I also asked for, we should see it, that it says this is who we hold accountable to. So I'm supportive of the position, don't get me wrong. I'm just thinking we got to fill it if need be, and people need to be held accountable to do what they need to do.
Sure.
Would be my thing.
If I could just, right on that note, in fairness to Mr. Correa, he also is doing security. So there is a big difference between the security force that you see today and the security force that you've seen maybe 4 years ago. I know it's a different security force, and I've only been here getting close to 6 years. So it's not even close to what's happening in the schools and the amount of issues that we try to, keep under control. So I think that job, that security role is much larger and much more responsibility than it ever was. And therefore, now more than ever, that other position needs to be put in place. And after securing the maintenance side of the house, we're going to start working on that piece.
Or just thinking outside the box. We have silos where we hold people accountable to manage departments and what they do. There's a logic to what you just said, to say then, fine, then Mr. Correa can stay in as the director of security, and if he needs to put on a security guard outfit sometime to go help out, why don't we just put him as the head of security and upgrade this position to a director of custodians? So we have, when you have positions that are, this is my job, that's my job, to me, just organizationally, one person's in charge, you know who to go to. We know to go to Mr. Monis if it's not working. So there's some thought to, if we got a vacant position, why not reorg the department to say, here's the group of this, and here's the group of that? Because
But I don't think there's a backup that way. That's the issue that I have. I don't think there's a backup, I'm sorry. I don't think there's a backup that way. So by having an assistant to the director, there is a backup. Joe's been in the district a long time. I don't know how many weeks vacation he has, but I'm sure it's a few. When Joe's not here, that work can't go to a supervisor. It's way too much work for a supervisor. The paper side of it alone is too big for a supervisor. And then we don't have a security person that's in charge of all the security people. We do have head security people, but they are located in buildings. They don't have the ability to get up and go somewhere. So I think that on the maintenance side, I believe that I can take care of Mr. Monis' stuff when he's not in. I have been. But on the other side of the house, I believe that the assistant and the director is the right model, and the supervisor beneath those two keeps the immediate back and forth to the schools under a different realm.
Yeah,
And
no, I understand. I just wanted to give you my opinion on it.
No, I agree.
I think it does make sense. You said you had something that was requested. I think that was from me.
So I have some documents that I will send over, and basically it's going to list the equipment and to the shape that the equipment is in, and also list it by building. So
out
it's an
of-
overall.
Yep, that's fine. But you said there was some things that are rated as poor that are
Right.
going to get replaced. So is that in the budget?
This is,
Because I think that
some
came
of
out
the
after
equipment is what
budget.
we have and some is small. There are no large items here. So some of the equipment has already been replaced in some of the schools. For instance, if there's a bad snow blower in the school, all the schools have received new snow blowers. So I think there's some items within this budget, in the supply chain here, that we may have replacements already for.
Yep. So when we see it, I can weigh in. My own opinion, my last comment on it, is that now that we have the money, if it's poor, it's not up to standard, we need to replace it, because the custodians need the best equipment too.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if you need more money, come back to us for more money, because that's why I asked for that document.
Sure.
We're spending $150,000 on an unmanned wash and wax thing, whatever you said, said it's going to work. Well, if we're paying $150,000 for that, we certainly should spend $500, $800 on something for each school to, whatever, you know what I mean? Vacuums, all that stuff, like, spend the money, get them the right equipment. With that, I
Absolutely.
yield. Thank you.
Anything further? Last piece you have, Mr. Pacheco, transportation.
So there are no changes in transportation as far as personnel. We do have our two clerks in the office. We have Donna, who continues to threaten me that she's retiring. However, we're not accepting that. So she runs a very tight ship and has the transportation under control. She's constantly working on the routes to be sure that they're as efficient as possible. She has a good relationship with the bus companies. I would say it can turn into love-hate relationship on a daily basis, but there's a lot of knowledge that she has and a lot of respect for the bus companies that we do use, and they do go out of their way for us. We are holding the cost of transportation. We've been steady for a few years, considering that most of these contracts have built-in escalation clauses, but we are holding the line by changing some of the things that we do, and by Mr. Almeida doing some fantastic math, so.
We appreciate that. Anything further for Mr. Pacheco? Mr. Hagiar?
I mentioned last month that I'm not a big fan of the CERTA.
Yes.
Because of safety, because of equity and the like. Can you look into that and get back to us via the superintendent on if there is any other options, related to it? It just doesn't sit well with me, the type of transportation. I think it's unsafe, unfair, and I know it's going to cost more money, or it would, but would it be something to look at? Because I just don't care for the way that
Sure.
that they
We can do
it.
some analysis for you,
And
absolutely.
my last question is on the 7Ds. Everybody, I've asked this a couple of years now, everybody in the office is eligible to drive a courier van?
Everybody in my office?
Like
In
the transportation folks, the clerks,
No, they're not.
they're not.
No.
So,
I don't know when I would have them drive. If they want to drive, they can drive after hours, but as far as during the day, there is not enough personnel to do the work that they have
Yep.
on a daily basis, so.
I just recall several years ago now, when I got back on this committee, that when we were asked to do a new position, it was put in the job description that said the person would be, all the people in the offices would be 7D license eligible in case of an emergency or something else, that they could drive the van. So
I will check on that, and I will, if
it's
that's
just a
the
backup.
case.
I don't think it's a regular thing. I just think it's a good thing to have as a backup. We have the vans, they should all be utilized, but,
We can check it,
I just think
absolutely.
it's something to look at, and it's a good system if we need to.
Okay.
With that, I yield. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Monas, welcome. Mr. Pacheco, thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Next up is Student Services, Special Education. Leads off that. And Pace Center. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Coogan, Superintendent Pons, and school committee members. First, I want to thank you for your time over the past few weeks and your thoughtful reflection. It's impossible to create a budget that is, one, fiscally responsible, that also meets student needs without it. I come to you today representing the Special Education Department. Currently, we service over 2,700 students in the district throughout full inclusion and sub-separate programs, and service-only students. Currently, we have sub-separate programs for students with social emotional learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, and intellectual impairments. As for those members who are new to the committee, last year, our budget requests were very administrative focused in order to support schools. We added 10 positions to schools in the form of cluster coordinators and BCBAs, as well as some of those word conversions, as well as a supervisor for our offices to increase administrative support schools across the board to promote program growth and overall student support. And this year, we're definitely seeing the dividends of those positions. They really had a tremendous impact. We have some principal surveys that will be getting out to you in the near future on the impact of those positions. This year, we're taking a much different approach in that we're really looking to increase the level of service we provide to students and the comprehensiveness across the district. With that, our department is requesting 6 positions and 1 conversion, along with a few other curriculum items. The first of those positions is a district-based BCBA. As you noted earlier in the year, we converted this position, or technically moved it over to the Laterno School due to the level of need and a new program over there that wasn't previously anticipated. This position would service all the consults that are located at schools that don't have a BCBA as a part of their staffing teams, as well as really support district schools for students who are experiencing challenges and supporting those students to keep them in a less restrictive environment. The really scientific approach behind applied behavioral analysis will really complement our school adjustment counselors nicely in order to support those students and, like as I noted before, keep them in a less restrictive environment. Next on our list here is 1 speech and language pathologist and 2 SLPAs, 2 assistants. As we're reviewing caseloads and looking at our projections for next year, as you can see, we've definitely had an increase in the amount of students on services, which is only a natural result in those pieces. Currently, caseloads are averaging around the high 40s to low 50s. We want to be able to have these folks to have the necessary preparation time, as well as provide comprehensive services, and in addition, at times, when applicable, to be able to co-treat with our CODAs as well, as we'll get to that portion later on in addition. Next up on our list is a certified occupational assistant. Similarly to our SLPAs, our CODA caseloads are in the low 50s. This person would probably be very centrally located at Henry Lord School, which has a large occupational therapy caseload, in order to really provide a comprehensive level of services to those students. In addition, we want to continue to cut down on the travel and shared schools our CODAs have between them as well. This would make 8 CODAs in the district, which would look at 2 per school. However, we definitely have high levels of caseload and demand at Spencer Borden and Henry Lord. In those same lines, we're also requesting 1 team chair position. As we have looked at an increase in number of students, and particularly that is at Durfee. Durfee this year started out in the high 390s for students with disabilities. At next year, we're projecting them as high as 572 to start the year. This is attributed to a large enrollment increase in Durfee, and as a part of that was student with disabilities. As well, we have a large 8th grade bubble transitioning up into the high school that is going to require a higher level of service, as you saw with the teacher request they made on Monday night. This is so that we can support those plans and meetings and have a manageable caseload up at the high school and really kind of make sure that we're providing, comprehensive meetings and services to students. Along those same lines, and looking at our last piece, we're looking to convert our lead school psychologist to a director of school psychological services. This person goes above and beyond our typical lead roles in that she evaluates 14 school psychologists and really does their professional development plans, as well as really looks at and evaluates the district caseload to ensure that we're remaining in compliance and that our school psychs are well supported within their processes. On a curriculum side of things, we're looking to bring in Learning Ally, which is an audiobook service for, I know here it says grades 2 through 12. We're going to really amend that to 7 through 12, which is going to bring down the cost. We collaborated with our folks from our teaching and learning department for the preview, and they said that really kind of the Wonders piece has a audio component to it already, that we determined we could adjust this to the grades 7 through 12. Learning Ally will provide additional access for our students who have reading difficulties to further access the curriculum, along with those who really struggle with comprehension. provide greater access across the board in terms of grade level curriculum for our students. In addition, our last piece is our professional development platform for our paraprofessionals, looking to make a shift from what we currently use as the exceptional child by Frontline to the master teacher. Master teacher provides a library of professional development that I think is about 2 to 3 times the size of what exceptional child really comes with. As we know, our paras really do an amazing job. We need to provide them a more higher level of support, and also we need to really get them exposure to different disabilities and aspects of education across the board. So we're looking to make the shift on that piece. Also, to note on that, we said it's for all paraprofessionals. Master teacher also has an extensive MLL library as well to support our paras in those classrooms in addition. So with that, those are our requests for this budget school year, and I open it up to questions and feedback.
Mrs. Rodrick?
How many kids right now are receiving OT services per their IEP? Because I see that we currently have 5 CODAs, and we're asking for a 6th one.
No, we currently have 7, and we're asking for
we
an
have a lead OT, 2 OTs, and then 5 CODAs on this.
Yep, and we have 1 grant funded through the ESSER grant for an OT as well.
Okay.
So in terms of the specific caseload numbers, I don't have those in front of me right now or off the top of my head. We can certainly get those to you.
Yeah.
Like we said, we are really hovering close to their caseload capacity of what they can service on a weekly basis. And much like all of our assistants, they all have to do their progress notes. They have to really keep track of what they're doing with each and every student to make sure that they're progressing within their goals and objectives. We need to make sure that they have the comprehensive planning time necessary for them to move along, in addition to meet with their supervising either OT or SLP. So that's part of the reason we're really looking to move this forward, and really just so that we give them the adequate time necessary to perform their jobs.
You don't have to convince me that you need another OT. I want to make that very clear. What I'm really asking about is that enough? Because if we have such a high caseload at schools like Henry Lord and Spencer Borden, where we have most of our ASD classrooms, and that's a topic of conversation for another day, but if we have such a high caseload there, then is adding 1 going to be sufficient to make sure that our kids are getting the services and the potential for co-treating as much as possible, because we know that a co-treat model actually is best practice.
Exactly, and it's more engaging for our students. And really in consulting with our lead OT, and really breaking down the numbers and looking at it, she thought this was going to be more than enough, and also to give our folks, to make sure they have, like we said, that planning and preparation time necessary to provide effective services.
And getting the supervision that they need and
Exactly.
all of those pieces. And so I asked the same question about speech. Is that enough?
Yes.
To support the needs? Because we know we've got lots of kids with speech.
Oh, without a doubt. And I feel like the number somewhat grows every day. As one of the pieces, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention within this too, we're also requesting an allotment to look at an evaluation of speech services by an external party. In our previous Walker report, they did interview our speech people. They took feedback, but nobody on that team actually had any expertise in the area. And we want to really ensure that we're providing best practices in terms of treatment, allotment of services, evaluation, and to really kind of get an external view on that piece to make sure we're doing the best and giving the best to our students here in Fall River. Mm-hmm. So that's just an accompanying portion to it. I'm sure they would definitely weigh in on that portion. But looking at, and once again, in consultation with our lead SLP, looking at caseloads and looking at just the needs across the district. Excuse me, I'm battling a cold. But also making sure that our folks have that adequate prep time, that we don't have them traveling across too many schools. We thought this number was going to be more than comprehensive.
How many, we used to contract out through Futures. How many currently, how many SLPAs are we currently contracting out for?
So I will get you definitives through the superintendent's email, but I want to say off the top of my head, we're looking at about 6 SLPs and I think 6 to 8 SLPAs. Some of those folks are part-time just because of the way it works for them, and that's the way they meet our level of need. But as part of our process, That's an evolving piece. We're always looking to kind of reduce that and replace with our own folks. We've seen that it's been productive to do that for them.
Right, so that's why I'm asking that question, because we know that in the past, that's been sort of a disjointed process a little bit, like they don't work for the district, so even attending IEP meetings, that the person's, the child's SLPA or SLP may not be at an IEP meeting and someone is standing in their place, and that doesn't give you the firsthand information about what's going on for that kid, because they're the person that has that relationship.
Agreed, and that's why we're looking to really continue that process. We're going to really start, as soon as this portion ends, we're going to start to really advertise for both positions. Usually, as we've done pretty much every spring through this portion, we've posted for that and really kept it within mind that we're also looking to really move in more of our own folks into some of these contracted positions as well.
How many kids are we servicing in the Catholic schools? And I don't know that folks are really aware that kids in Catholic schools can still receive special ed services through their district. So that's part of the reason why I'm asking that question.
So the number definitely fluctuates. Was reported in the October number, I believe, was 73 off the top of my head. And to clarify that, we have 73 students on IEPs within the Catholic and private schools in the area. For speech services, I want to say it's probably in the range of 30 to 35.
Okay. Are we providing any school-based OT for those kids as well?
Not at this time. That was an area in that, we have regular consultation with all the private schools as part of our proportionate share responsibilities. And this has been the primary request. We've kind of opened up that question with them each and every time of, is this working for your schools? Is this meeting the need? And they have been a resounding yes. They've been very happy with the delivery of services. That's also another position that we shifted over to one of our internal folks instead of Futures, which it's been a seamless transition.
So that becomes the other piece to that question. So when we're providing services to the Catholic schools, or if we have a kid who is on an IEP in a Catholic school setting, what is the district's responsibility in terms of oversight of that IEP?
Certainly. So if they are a Fall River Public Schools resident, we're responsible for really holding their annual reviews and reevaluation within state and federal guidelines. If they have speech services, we're also responsible for developing them a service plan. Really, that service plan just details how we're going to deliver the service, where we're going to do it, and the duration. If they are a non-Fall River Public School student, but they attend a private school in Fall River, we're solely responsible for developing them a service plan of how we deliver those services. The way the funding works in terms of proportionate share that's allocated through IDEA, we get those students count in our count, so we have funds that need to go to them as well, and that's why we deliver those services through a service plan.
So that's the service delivery part, but in terms of a kid who, say, has an IEP, there are these recommendations, the placement remains at a private school, is there any oversight of the Catholic school? I'm just trying to understand, because they have a portion of the funding that comes through for those kids. So I want to understand, what's our responsibility to make sure that those kids are receiving whatever academic services are on there that are identified for that student.
So, as in the current agreement with our Catholic schools, we provide speech and language services. We don't currently provide any academic services. We do a lot for any of those students to have walk-in services at their neighborhood school. And we do have parents who access those. We do have parents who access walk-in OT, PT. Some of them also choose not to have speech at their school, and they would choose to have it at their local elementary school. Why, I'm not really sure, because we do offer it at those programs, but we leave it up to their choice. We want to be as flexible and work with those parents, as much as we would any other student. So we do offer those on those pieces. That's pretty much what our consultation piece has resulted in over time. It works out that really kind of what is allotted for those schools really falls almost perfectly in what they need in terms of speech and language as well.
So that really is the key to that question. So is it that really what they're getting in terms of their share of those funds, is it really just for the speech and language services and the evaluation piece and the annual review piece? Or are there additional funds that go to them in order to carry out pieces of that IEP.
So, in looking at that, we're responsible in terms of holding those meetings no matter what. The proportionate share funds are what covers the speech and language portion of those services delivered. We have to run their meetings, that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Those proportionate share funds don't get applied to holding those meetings, they don't get applied to the staff that attend those and run those pieces. That's solely as part of our responsibility, as those are students and you know, citizens of Fall River.
Okay, I've got to think.
It's the proportionate share process in terms of how it works. It is extremely complicated. I'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss it out, because it is a very elaborate and complicated process. Believe me, it took me a solid amount of time to really understand it. And the state, unfortunately, in their presentation, doesn't necessarily make it any easier.
Right, and so part of the reason I'm asking those questions is I get lots of questions from parents about what their rights are in a Catholic school to access services within the public school. And so then, you know, it becomes kind of this push-pull with some of the Catholic schools about, you know, their place there, and that's the parent's choice, but they do have this IEP that the school is receiving funds for. And so those are some of the questions that keep coming up, because a child may be placed in a Catholic school, they're included in that count, they're receiving funds for the student, and yet no services are being provided. And so that's sort of the crux of that.
So, and I think one of the misinterpretations sometimes that happens with that is that the funds are ours, and they're for us to spend at that school.
Right.
So they're not necessarily at the discretion of the Catholic school to spend. That's why we have those collaborative consultation meetings and determine how we would deliver those funds or services at that school. I mean, we have districts, we'll say in the Commonwealth, who don't actually spend any of their proportionate share funds at those schools. They don't provide any services. They may say, all right, we're going to, excuse me, they're going to provide professional development, and those teachers could come to it.
Right, so what you just explained is, I think, where families get caught up and get sort of frustrated by that, because the message that they may be receiving, not from Fall River Public Schools, but from their private school, is different. Right, and so that's why I'm asking that question publicly, so that way families do have some of that information, that this is the process that we go by. And I know that doesn't answer all of the questions, but again, like if we're looking at how we're spending special ed funds, I want to make sure that that includes those kids and they're getting the services that they require.
And we'll be having a consultation meeting in the spring that's going to be open to parents. It'll probably be at one of the local Catholic schools, just because, you know, that's their home base. And I think, you know, maybe we'll look at providing them some more kind of professional development in terms of what the process looks like, just so that they're informed as well.
What their rights are. And we used to have a liaison to the Catholic schools, and now I'm going back a couple of years, because I think this was even possibly before your time.
We do have a team chair currently who oversees all of the IEPs that were within the Catholic schools.
Yeah, this was different than a team chair. There was a
okay.
separate person that used to be, I guess, sort of a liaison to the Catholic schools. And there were monthly meetings that were held for families at the Catholic schools. Is any of that still happening? I know with COVID, that's not necessarily.
It hasn't since I entered the district, and I wasn't aware of it happening previously. And it's not something that the Catholic schools have ever brought up either.
Yeah, it absolutely was happening.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I can't remember who it was, but it was definitely before your time. But when that was in place, I found that communication seemed to go a lot smoother with families. But now it seems like we're getting more and more of those questions. So when we sit here, you know, it's all of our kids receiving services, not just, you know, the kids in this district. You know, I think the superintendent had said before that there are really no boundaries. There are kids. Right, so we take care of our kids.
No, certainly, and that's really the approach we've taken in collaboration with our private schools, that these are all of our students, no matter where they attend.
Okay, I'll be quiet for now. I yield.
Mr. Aguirre?
Just one question. I think at the subcommittee we can discuss these two, because it's for next year, a little more in depth, but there's a position in here that I think is part of negotiations with the admin union, and there's a few of these that keep coming up, and I think that we got to be careful about putting them in public documents, that we're going to convert somebody to a different position because they're subject to negotiations. So I won't go into detail on it, but I just think to everybody as we're going forward, if it's subject to negotiations, I don't think it should be in these documents. But with that, I yield.
If I could just clarify that one, Mr. Aguirre, if you recall, that was a position that we talked about during negotiations, and I said I wanted to wait until budget time because I didn't want to just slip that conversion in at that time.
Yeah, but I'm
And
just
the
saying it
union is
shouldn't, we had that
aware.
discussion in executive session, so
Mhm.
we haven't done that on this to say this is
Right.
this is the end result of it, but there's a few other positions that are coming up that I'm going to have the same question on, that if it's admin positions, we just have to be careful of putting the cart before the horse, that's all.
Exactly.
With that, I yield.
Thank you.
Anything further for Mr. Loesch? Okay. Student Services. Who's handling that? Mr. Woodward or
Right, Dr. Taylor.
Dr. Taylor? Okay, welcome. On video.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Superintendent Clark, and members of the school committee. It's a pleasure to be with you, although virtually, and I'm excited to share the work that we've been doing and to share our needs to improve our capacity going forward. Our school adjustment counselors, school guidance counselors, and attendance officers have been on the front lines when it comes to supporting the social, emotional, and mental health needs of the approximately 10,300 students we serve. These school and district-based staff work diligently to support students in crisis, connect students and families to community-based resources, deliver meals and academic resources to families in need, and a host of other responsibilities in each of their schools. Although I met with each school-based student support team this month and thank them personally for the work that they do, I also want to take this time to publicly acknowledge their efforts. As a social worker myself, I know firsthand the sacrifices they have made and are making to support our students, teachers, and administrators. So to share with you some of the work that we've done. So in terms of social emotional learning at the district level, we continue to support the implementation of our SEL curriculum, Choose Love, in grades K to 8. We're also in the process of reviewing a variety of SEL curricula, specifically focused for secondary school, because we've learned that we need SEL curriculum that is more culturally relevant and responsive to the issues that our young adults face. We've also begun to build SEL libraries in each of our schools. These libraries consist of children's books, therapeutic activity books, and professional practice books, including guides with hundreds of strategies to strengthen 504 and IEP plans. Each school has received 17 books to date. All of these books are titled in my own personal professional library, so I know they work. We also are in the process of building a digital library in Google Drive for small group counseling. We intend to grow these resources throughout the school year so that our counseling staff has current and culturally relevant tools in their toolbox. Several of our schools have participated in professional development by external partners focused on building positive relationships between students and school-based staff. Some of these trainings include work by Charlie Appleseed and Jessica Minihan in particular. We also have done a lot of work with our Better Task Force. So in spring 2021, FRPS established the Superintendent's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force. This committee, composed of both federal public school staff and external community partners, focuses on equity and access, including race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ethnicity, and disability. The goals of this task force include, but are not limited to, 1, designing and engaging in a visioning process to support the district's diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity goals. 2, strategically communicate a new vision for inclusive and equitable practice for the district. And 3, create an emerging roadmap for diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity practice, along with accompanying recommendations. That work will end in April, and the committee looks forward to sharing the recommendations in an upcoming school committee meeting. With regard to attendance, the student services team is working diligently to support schools in improving student daily attendance across the district. Every school has an attendance goal. Every student support team meets with attendance officers regularly. Revised policies and procedures have been developed in order to keep a better eye on students. We've also been monitoring the impact absences, we're at 28%. If we remove excused rates and only looked at unexcused absences, that would be 12%. And as of today, our projected chronic rate for 12 or more absences through 118 days, which would be Saturday the 14th, March 14th, we're projected to hit 48%. We've also supported the promotion of various school-based initiatives, including but not limited to celebrating attendance growth with initiatives with incentives and award ceremonies. We've been expanding the use of those ceremonies as a way to draw students in. We have also, as a result of the Alderman Commission report, updated the attendance policy and procedure for consecutive absences to ensure the safety of students and to promote attendance. This is the first time there's been a district policy or procedure to ensure consistency for all schools regarding formalized interventions at specific dates and minutes. We've also expanded the D4 policy to include middle schools as well, and have made a full shift away from the former F6 policy to D4 policy being more stringent and allowing us to get a better handle on students before they fall into the cracks. If we look at the work of our attendance officers, they've been working diligently to re-engage our disengaged students and families. To date, our attendance officers have filed 116 CRAs, conducted 700 home visits, and made many families. We would never be able to count how many calls they made. Our attendance officers also run attendance groups in some of our schools. They connect families to community resources and act as liaison between the family and the transportation team. In our monthly team meeting, we review attendance data, capture trends in the field, and examine and exchange common practices among the team. We have also launched our emergency vehicle pickup program. The goal of this initiative is to remove the barrier of transportation for our students and families. We have 3 cars that are used by attendance officers and school administrators. These cars are used to pick up students, in some cases parents who cannot make a parent meeting concerning their struggling students, or for school meal delivery or other related needs. We have 3 cars, one at Morton, one at Henry Lord, and one at Durfee. To date, these cars have been used by both attendance officers and school-based administrators 100 times by 10 schools. So as I've shared, this is just a snapshot of what a day looks like in the world of student support. Right now, I'll move on to the needs. So when I joined FRPS a year ago, so Monday was my 1-year anniversary, I was met by a team of 3 who worked an incredible amount of hours to provide much-needed support environments to our 16 schools. After 1 year in this role, it was overwhelmingly clear to me that this team needs to be expanded in order to facilitate the transformation needed to improve discipline outcomes. Today, I'm asking for 1 position conversion, 3 new positions, and a stipended leadership opportunity for our school-based school adjustment aspects. The title conversion that I'm requesting is that we change the lead staff position, change that title to Director of SEL and Mental Health Services. We currently have a lead staff who is doing director level work, and we think that we need to have her title be at the same parity as the other directors on the team. This person not only provides support and guidance to 50 staff in the district, but she also manages student crises and coordinates SEL programs. The first new position that we are requesting is the SEL integration specialist. So one of the things that we've learned is that the job of the lead staff is actually the job of 2 people. position we're asking for is the lead family engagement specialist. So this new position would focus on providing support and professional development for the 16 community facilitators in district-wide family engagement efforts. The stipend opportunity that we're asking for is, now that we have 50 school-adjusted counselors, which will grow to approximately 60 or so, we need to begin to develop teacher leaders using that model, so that we're asking for stipends for an elementary lead, a middle school lead, and a high school lead. So we'd like to be able to choose some folks from among our teams and have designate some of the leadership responsibilities so they can support our efforts. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Larrabee?
Hi, Dr. Taylor, how are you?
I'm good.
Good, good. So question, can you give me a little more information on the movement therapist? Little more, please.
Yeah, sure. So we actually have a staff that's already hired. That is what her therapeutic license is. So that's using movement, dance, it's using yoga as a way to help students control their body, as a way to use movement and dance to manage your emotions. If you think about sort of what Ms. Francisco shared about how music is important and how music can be therapeutic, it's a similar movement, but it's a structured way to teach students to use their body as a way to heal themselves.
Okay, are you district-wide? Are you, okay. Not a specific grade level or, okay. So I'm actually excited about this. When I first was elected to school committee, it was basically because I was really looking into SEL and the services the kids were getting or their lack of. And then COVID happened, and it kind of all, I kind of stepped back and let the professionals do what they needed to do before I started jumping in head first. But this is exactly what I was thinking. That getting the lead SACs at each grade level, at each school level, you know what I mean? And then a director of SEL. As soon as I was elected, I was like, we need a director of SEL, so this is exactly what I have envisioned and more. So I hope this is just the beginning of the and more. So I'm excited. I thank you. I want to send a big thank you to the people that have had the boots on the ground this past 2 years. And I'm excited about these positions because I think they're needed. That's all. I yield.
Thank you.
Mr. Aguirre?
The lead SACs that you have here, that's after hours? Would they be doing additional time like the other ones for stipends?
It would be after hours. We're coordinated so that it doesn't impact their school duties.
Yeah. I think the positions, make sense. To the last point that was made about having a need and spending resources on this type of topic, that's why we hired the assistant superintendent specifically for these departments. So I'm in favor of some of these moves, subject to subcontract stuff, because some of this is admin union related. But I think we need to make sure that from yourself, Dr. Taylor, under the superintendent, we put that into one department, because we expected big things out of having an assistant superintendent solely for the SEL stuff and counseling and attendance and all that stuff. So you've only been here for 1 year, but I, for one, am looking for results based on that. So we give positions, and then we look and say, okay, what is the result of this? We should be running, in my opinion, a well-oiled machine between yourself and the people that you have under you now, having systems in place so that we're doing the right thing. Like, we've spent the resources already. I'm in favor of these additional resources, but I don't want to let the public think that we haven't spent resources. We have. We made it, the prior committee made this a priority. I, for one, am looking for the results of how did this work. So I'm not looking for an answer, just from me telling you and the superintendent, I expect that we're going to get some good, solid results out of what we're investing here. The integration specialist, is that going to be a teacher? Is that a teacher union job? Is that, what do you envision that?
We're still working through the details, but we definitely want that person to have teacher experience, because as the research and professional practice tell us, that work starts with teachers. So we've got to be able to equip our teachers to be able to manage smaller issues and to be able to cultivate positive SEL development, so we can have the teacher to be able to support teachers in that area.
Yeah, so I guess to be determined, right?
Right.
Is that, yeah. And the lead family engagement specialist, this is, I think we're adding a whole bunch of the community facilitators, and I think that's under maybe some changes or whatever on the timing. So I think these are all valid positions. I just want to see that when we create the position, if I planned out a year ahead, what is the result going to be of these positions? Because we get criticized all the time. We just keep on throwing money at it, and we're going to hope things change. We can't do that in this. We're making solid, major investments, but a year from now, the results need to be this. If we're doing all this stuff and then we can't figure out, we don't know what every kid's going through, we don't have the data on this, it really makes us look stupid that we're spending all this money, we don't have the, the whole piece. The only question I had was, and I see Mr. Woodward here, it says here you're 6 through 12, Mr. Woodward, is that?
Yes, I support school guidance counselors from 6 through 12. We currently don't have any school guidance counselors in the elementary schools.
Yep. I'm just, I'm not being critical, trust me. What I'm looking for is, I've had some historical perspective on being on the committee, and we've gone as a district from not a lot of guidance counselors at the high school to plenty of them. Then we went quickly to, now we got a director full-time, then the numbers went up to 13, then the numbers go here, and then now you're 6 to 12, so it's not a reflection on you, sir. It's just that, in my mind, we went pretty quick on heavy on guidance. And to that same point, what are we getting for that? I'm not looking for the answer, but you can get that to the superintendent. But we have made a tremendous investment in guidance counselors, guidance administrators,
Absolutely.
as you know. What are we getting for that? That's, in the future. What are we going to see? And that's where I want to, before we keep on approving more administrative positions, it gets to be like, when do we get a return on our investment in a one-pager, some documentation and some data to say, that was a good investment?
Absolutely.
Because if it's not, then we should take out the investment and move it into something that's going to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you to you and your colleagues for being so supportive in years past. We can definitely get you a one-pager to talk about the tremendous impact that counselors have had both on academics, social and emotional learning, and college and career and post-secondary readiness. So we'll get that to you.
And my last comments are just for the other two young ladies that are sitting here. I think you're doing a great job of holding everything together. Crisis happens, you're all there to help the children. I think you're doing a great job, so keep up the good work. We need to give you more resources. But I also would ask the superintendent that when we have the next subcommittee meeting, that we get some FaceTime and some questions to all of the players that are actually in the trenches, because we a lot of times talk above want to see what's really happening, so we'll put that on the agenda in the future. With that, I yield and thank you.
Anything further?
I have a question.
Ms. Rodrick?
You said the movement therapist, hi, Dr. Taylor. You said the movement therapist was going to be district-wide?
Yes.
Okay, so I see that it's a specialty therapeutic service that's being provided. So how are we identifying who's getting that service?
Right, so we'll coordinate with special ed, we'll begin to pilot students who, by looking at their IEPs, if there's students who we have attention issues or students who need breaks, like we'll think about, we'll develop it, who are the students that are eligible. But I personally eventually would love to see movement therapists, I'd love to see art therapy. There are a host of different other kinds of therapies as opposed to talk therapy. Because one of the things And so, you know, therapists, we know that art can be a way to get something out of a student. Dance can be a way to get some feelings out of a student. And so I do think that building out alternative therapies within the district, I think saves money long term. And I think it also will help with staff retention because our staff have other specialties that they don't have into or get to expect in our district.
They definitely do have other specialties. I'm just thinking, you know, the capacity to have kids referred, I think it's a great thing. I mean, you don't have to convince me that we have alternative forms of therapy, because you're right, not every kid is a talk therapy kid. We know that. But I'm just thinking, how is that going to be identified, because that is such a new model for the district? Like, what systems do we have in place, or will we have in place before this person comes on, to be able to make sure that we're identifying kids appropriately and using this person appropriately? You know, are they going into the SEL classrooms? Is that where we're going to start that? You know, are we going into the special ed classrooms? What are we looking at?
If I could answer
And
that.
I agree, if the position is approved, then we'll definitely work out all those things before then, for sure.
If I could just piggyback off what Dr. Taylor is saying as well, too. So another vision that we have is that movement specialist would go into some of our SEL classrooms for our kids who need that extra support, who talk therapy doesn't work, but just maybe doing the movement therapy as another means to work with our students and to support them. So that's also another way that we're looking to have this movement therapy start at those 2 schools that have the classrooms, the students that need those extra supports in.
Because the way that I'm conceptualizing it as a clinician is just what you said, was that we focus on those SEL classrooms and maybe doing a group model, or we focus on RPA, or we focus on STONE, where we know that the kids could benefit from additional supports. Not that the rest of the kids in the district can't, but we clarify what we're doing there first and then build out to the rest of the community. Like, we know that these services work well. We've got a big district, and so I'm just thinking one movement therapist that hopefully we add on to with different expressive therapies. We got to make sure that we do it right from the get-go, because otherwise we're just going to have, it's going to be chaotic, and that's not going to be good for anybody. I had another question and it's gone. Happened again. If it comes to me, I'll come back, so for now I yield.
Mr. Aguirre.
Just in the budget, it says school adjustment counselor, and on the literature, it says movement therapist, so I think we just need to be cognizant of, if we are going to create a new position called movement therapist without the school adjustment counselor license per se, we need to have that job description sent to us yesterday, so it's just a process situation, and you might have a person that is currently as Dr. Taylor said, a school adjustment counselor, but if you think in the future, you might not. So you might not want to pigeonhole this situation to say that person has to have a school adjustment counselor license, which is in the union, but, you know, you get the idea. But thinking ahead, if we want more, we should have a separate job description that they might just require a different type of license. With that, I yield.
Anything further? I come back to you, Ms. Rodriguez. Gone. Join the club. Anything further? Okay. Our last one on that group is the PACE Center. Ms. Kudo.
Actually,
That was part of it.
Oh, that was part of it? Oh.
Yes,
How's the PACE Center going?
amazing.
Everything's functioning like a well-oiled
It
machine?
is. We have a lot of construction going on right now, so that's a little bit chaotic, but families continue to come in. We are also launching a new registration system through Power School. That's been launched this week. So lots of new learning, but very excited about this new system. It's going to be so much more family-friendly, parent-friendly, and user-friendly at the school level to really get our schools, you know, the data that they need at enrollment and be much more efficient.
Any problems, you let us know. Any questions? Mr. Aguirre?
We had talked earlier about the K, you're doing everything now, right? All registration is on one site?
Yes.
High school?
Yep, pre-K through 12th grade now, all at pace.
And when they register, I know not to rehash a conversation we had earlier, but currently, do you feel it's okay the way it's going with the home language survey, the registration? Do you have enough staff to make it through the year?
Yep, so during the school year, we do have enough staff. Where we do get some extra staff in is during the summer months, which is our busiest time, especially in August. But just to clarify the process of that, when a family comes in and registers with one of our clerks, they are trained in asking the survey. It's a survey, survey questions with the families. Once another language is identified, that information is sent to the MLL department, who will then schedule appointments with the family to do the assessment. So at that point, further clarification can be made by that MLL staff, which is a licensed ESL teacher.
But you feel that you're in good shape now as far as
Yes.
doing everything that needs to be
Yes.
done?
The MLL clerk would be amazing, situated at the PACE Center, because I think that person would really add to the parent engagement as far as making those phone calls and answering those questions that many families do have around those services.
And are you the administrator of on site at the PACE Center?
Yes.
So just my own personal opinion would be when we have an administrator, it's like having a principal of a school, everybody that works in that school works for the principal. When we have a person that's under a different principal that works at one school, it really doesn't make sense, but that's for the superintendent to figure out who reports to who. But, because when we call it one thing, if we call it a MLL clerk, in some ways that implies it's an MLL clerk. What I envision as reading this and talking about it here would be that it's a PACE clerk that's going to do those services. That's just my own opinion, regardless of what it says, but superintendent can handle that, I'm sure. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, thank you, guys. Next up, Human Resources. Oh,
There are no more positions, right, Tom?
nothing?
Yep.
Okay. Human Resources, there's no additional positions there?
Question.
Mr.
He's going
Aguirre.
to come to the table, though.
Not necessarily budget-related, but I believe that I saw somebody's leaving your department on one of the meetings.
Yes.
Is that just a straight, so they're leaving and then now you have a vacancy, so at budget time, sometimes if a person's leaving, it might be the time to say, well, my department needs to do things a little differently or whatever, convert and create, are you looking at the same, just?
I don't foresee converting the position. What I do see is perhaps revising the job description a little bit. I think we face some pretty difficult challenges over the last 18 to 24 months, and I think a little bit different skill set might be more beneficial to the person who replaces that person. But if there's revisions to the job description, we would bring it forward. I still see the need for the position. However, I do have two very capable admin assistants. Over the last 12 to 14 months, we've processed over 700 personnel changes between people leaving the district and people hiring and coming on board. You know, there is quite a bit of work in the office, and I do see the need for the position. I do think we need to change the job description just a little bit.
But otherwise, budgetarily, you didn't ask for anything that was denied or anything like that? You're not looking that you need another person?
No, the only thing I did request was a little bit of additional funding for advertising, because I think we do need to go to market a little bit differently, facing some of the challenges we're facing right now. And one other thing that I do foresee us bringing to the committee is the possibility of updating some software for the onboarding process. Currently, there's still a great deal of paper involved in what we do in terms of personnel files and everything else, and I think we need to move and shift away from that to do something where we can electronically exchange a lot of the documents before they come in. And I think that'll give us some efficiencies, not only in the onboarding process, but as well as cutting down on the volume of paper that actually has to travel from place to place in order for, people to be, paid properly, et cetera. So
That makes sense. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to be heard. Thank you. I yield.
Anything further? Thank you. The last two departments of the school committee, where we're talking about extensive cuts, only kidding. No, there's nothing, there's no change in our budget at all, and the superintendent has told me there's no change in her budget at all. Anybody have any questions before we wrap? Mr. Aguirre?
The money that we're paying for the computer, the board docs, can we have a review of that and possibly look at whether that's actually a good use of funds or not? I have my own opinion, I'll save that for talking to the superintendent, but I don't know if that's a yearly thing, is it, so if you can get back to us and see if, thank you, I yield.
Anything further?
I am going to make a comment on making cuts. To be clear,
Only kidding about us.
I didn't know that school committee members got paid when I ran.
Me either.
So Ms. Larrabee and I are on the same page, Mr. Butler.
I'd like to know your definition of paid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
we
not
had
mon-
no
no,
idea,
yeah.
to be clear, like, there's a few of us that didn't even know that was a thing. So you could say, we're gonna make cuts, and we'd be like, we didn't know we were getting anything in the first place.
I don't want the public thinking that, that Ms. Rodrick is getting rich off of her
Oh,
few
sweet.
$100s a month.
No.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
Motion to
Chair,
adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
I'm
one
sorry,
second.
Mr. Aguirre, I had
Sorry.
another question, I'm sorry.
Is this all of the departments? Yes. So the only question I had, and I don't know where it actually fit in, was, and it might have been through special ed or your budget, was for Michael Joyce, the contract for the attorney, Michael Joyce. So my concern, and I've asked this in the past, I feel that we don't have a solid contract. Well, I don't feel. I know that we don't have a solid contract. I know that we don't know exactly when we hire, when we don't. There's no parameters, there's no checks and balances on that contract whatsoever. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but there is no checks and balances. So if you could look at that. And to Ms. Roderick's point about not getting paid, I can say this with sincerity, that I find no reason why the work that we do here on the school committee is as difficult, as long and tiresome, and as important as a city councilor, to be quite honest. And for the city council to get paid twice as much based on the charter is not fair, and it's not right. So as far as, nobody's getting rich on it. But if we have school committee members that are busting their butts, they should get at least equal amount of money as a city councilor, in my opinion. So maybe Mr. Mayor can take care of that however that process is, but I appreciate it, and I yield.
All right, thank you, guys. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Deb, please call the roll.
Mr. Aguirre?
Here.
Mr. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Ms. Pereira?
Yes.
Ms. Roderick?
Yes.
Mayor Coogan?
Yes.